Director Davidoff. Thank you, Christine. And I'm just going to check. I know I checked sound with Director Davidoff. Director Hewitt, let's check your sound. Do you want to say good morning?
Good morning.
Good morning. We can hear you well. All right. Well, then let's go. Welcome everybody to our July board meeting. I'm going to start this meeting by acknowledging we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous people within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. Sorry, Christine, you're good with roll call? Okay, good, thanks. I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda for this board meeting. Thank you, McFadden. Maine, any additions? Being online, okay. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. And minutes from June. Thank you. Teresa.
Yeah.
I don't know why I cannot remember your last name myself.
It's right here.
Chapman, yeah, I'll take that. Weatherhead. Thank you. I can see that far. Any corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Stuart, you have some introductions.
Yeah, so through the chair, the first one's actually not a new position. The purchasing agent position's been around for a bit. Mark is the second individual that we've had in that position. So Mark Brathwaite joins us in our purchasing agent position. We've done a lot of back office work to help support this position over the years in terms of our agreement structure, contract structure, communication between departments. So I think Mark's got a good footing to get started with some efficiencies across groups and trying to generally save us some money, which is pretty much his mandate with respect to how we're operating through recreation, fire, and resource recovery. Ian Briscoe with Community Services has moved over to that emergency program coordinator position that was approved during budget this year. So that was the one the board asked us to send a letter to EMCR requesting funding to support that position. And Dan Honorad joins us in our AR department. Bogdan was with us for a relatively short period of time and ended up leaving for personal reasons. But Dan joins us now and has been with us for about 3 or 4 weeks now.
Thank you, Stuart. Just to acknowledge, we have alternate director Dumas for City of Preston and alternate director Luxembourg for Nesson. And did I say your last name right? Luxembourg, okay. I should know that by now. It's only been a few years. Welcome, both of you. And we'll have alternate director Fike joining us for New Denver as soon as he can. Thank you. 3.1 invasive species working group. Stuart, can you just remind us where this is at?
Sure. So through the chair, this originally came to the March board meeting. It was referred by the board. The ask at that time was to pay it out of general administration. Due to the fact that the budget was then approved at that meeting, we lost the ability to fund it out of general administration because the taxation deadline had passed. So we've been searching for a few months to try to find a place where this could go. The influx of funds from the province are for LGCAP, where they gave us a 3-year funding in advance. That has been suggested now to fund this program for 2024.
Thank you, Director Jackman.
Yeah, thank you. I support funding the program, having heard from Crescent Valley farmers for the 5th term now. Question is though about LG cap, because there's this item, there's 4.2.2 and on. There's a lot of numbers, and some of the reports will say, well, we have this much in reserve or available. This is only going to take away this. It's really nice to see total block of funding for 3 years, all the hard commitments and all the things that the board has recommended that, yeah, if we do this, it would come out of, or this position would come out of LG cap. Because I'm afraid the balance is a moving part. Really nice to kind of see that big balance. These are little amounts, relatively small amounts, but it'd be nice to see a chart with all of them.
Yeah,
through the chair, there are 3 requests on this agenda today for LGCAP funding, one of them coming from CSLAC, the other 2 direct to board. And yes, as part of our, we're actually bringing a report to the board in August around the LGCAP funding. So not only what we've received and haven't spent previously, but then the $380,000 or just shy of that the province provided for the 3-year in advance funding. We'll have all of that in the report, and depending on the decisions made by the board today, that will be up to date based on what's been spent, what's been committed of those funds.
And have a supplemental to the actual program itself. I do a lot of driving, it seems, 40-some thousand kilometers a year. lately I've noticed a lot of farmers mowing the highway right of ways. And I see in some of this information like Thompson Nickel, they have agreements in place because obviously, look at the weeds. Maintenance contractor mows 2, 3, 4 feet at best off the edge of pavement, and then there's just massive weeds. And I see these guys pulling their tractors through these rough ditches and stuff, but I assume that is part of what we have to and work towards, like Highway 3. You know, farmers are diligently keeping all the weeds out, and you see a fence line and just massive weeds. So hopefully that'll be one of the first things that we'll focus on. And if there's permission being granted and whatever has to be done to these ditches, regrading or whatever, so these tractors can pull their mowers through them and not keep hitting rocks. That's gotta be a part, because our feed market is deteriorating out of the Creston Valley because of weeds. It's everything that was good for horses, pretty quickly good for mules and goats. That'll be it.
Thank you, Graham, and then Vandenberg and myself.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. So through the chair, just one thing I'm curious about on page 3, it says under the providing expertise and consultation on the development of RDCK invasive species program, a coordinated area F cost share for knotweed control on private land. Like, what is that?
Sangeeta, I see you're online. Did you hear the question? We can't hear you. No, we still can't hear you. Do you maybe want to come in the room and, okay,
What was did I hear area F?
Yeah.
it's the knotweed cost share program on the private land for area F.
The $200?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, no, Sangeeta probably doesn't even know about it.
If you can speak to it, go ahead.
I can speak to it. So, let's see, what's the best background? It is not.
Director Newell is going to respond as well, but if you want to just hang out for a second, sorry, your sound is.
Basically, a landowner approached me saying they had knotweed on their property. It's happened twice or 3 times now. And so we entered in through CKIS a cost sharing, 50-50 cost sharing for CKIS to address that knotweed concern. One was on Beasley, a massive one, kind of half on the right of way, half on the property. This one was on just up here, a couple of mile out of town, I think, or within that, and one other one. So that's basically it. And we did a cost share with CKIS. I'm just trying to think if there was more background, because this one was last year, the one was 2 years ago. And just seeing if there's any other background. That's what it is. We
Thank
entered
you.
into a cost share. It was something I've done a number of times.
Sangeeta, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Sorry, I didn't fully hear the question.
It was the question regarding the knotweed cost share program on private property in area F. I think Director Newell's answered
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah, I believe the Director Newell answered that. So, yeah, and a property owner can invite the Central Kootenay invasive species society to come in and do treatment on the knotweed. It's to the resident.
Director Graham, supplemental?
Just supplemental, I was just wondering like how it was implemented. So, if a homeowner approaches like a director with knotweed, then the process is to contact.
Oh, I can explain. May I?
Is it necessary to go through the program details
Okay.
right now? We're
Okay.
focused on funding the
all
program,
right.
so I think you can follow up on that one. Is that okay, Director Graham? Okay, thank you. If you can just stick around, Sangeeta, while we're doing this item.
Paris is online too.
Paris is online? Okay, Paris is online, that's good. Thank you, Sangeeta. Vandenberg, go ahead.
Great, thank you through the chair. So yes, we are talking about the funding to build and extend the working group. So the working group, and so I have a clarity question, first of all, from when I hear the LGCAP funding question for this and other related programs are going to be done in August. Is that what I understood you said?
Yes, through the chair, there'll be a broader LGCAP report coming in August. Because we've now got, in addition to the $230,000 that's currently sitting in the reserve for the previously received funds. We then got a check for $380,000. So the board is sitting on a relatively significant amount of money. So that's what's there right now. There's these smaller requests in this agenda today. Depending on what gets approved, we'll incorporate that into the reconciliation, and you'll see the big picture as Director Jackman asked for as part of the report in August.
Okay, good, thank you for that. And
Supplemental, go ahead.
supplemental, so we do have, Director, Susan and I are working together on the working group, but unfortunately, the working group, has been stalled. We've had one meeting and we're still working through our terms of reference. And we can't have any more meetings to discuss all these type of things in terms of where we ought to be putting our priorities and how we should be maximizing the value of the CCAS program. And we can't continue those conversations until we address this funding. And unfortunately, it's taken this path, but hopefully today we can get it resolved and then we can start working on some good things. Further to Director Jackman's point, yes, weeds and invasive species within our agricultural community is.
Do you want to make a motion? Sounds like you support it.
Now that I understand we can do the motion, I'd be happy to do so. And just want to reiterate the concern that Director Jackman put forward. This is something that we have to start paying very close attention to. So if the chair would allow me, I would put forward the motion that we support.
Okay, motion's on the floor. I was next on the list. The only thing I wanted to indicate was, in terms of the LGCAP funding, I'm comfortable knowing our rough balance right now is significant. There's quite a bit of other things coming forward that we can consider, and that'll be a broader conversation in August. This amount doesn't cause me concern, so I'm good with that. The one thing I wanted to note is the amount of things that are other provincial ministries' responsibility that are coming through these other angles, I'm not comfortable with. So through to Paris, I'm hoping, as a staff person, I believe that would be communicating with CCAS in this round. I would really like to see advocacy that Ministry of Transportation takes responsibility for its rights of ways. The work we have to do to use those, to put signage up, is clear. They own it and operate it. So when it comes to management, they have to take the same responsibility. So I'm not comfortable with local taxation offsetting their requirements to manage the land. That being said, we're in this state and the farmers are needing the support, so I can support it, but on the condition that advocacy is very strong, that this is Modi's responsibility. In terms of those specific aspects, there's a lot of other areas and bases are coming in. Make that on the list, please. So Paris, I don't know if you have any response to that, or if you just want to take that as something you can communicate with CCAS. If there's something that needs to come back to the board from an advocacy perspective, please do ensure that comes back to us. Because I do feel like the management of Crown land, whether it's Ministry of Transportation, forestry, whatnot, that is a large impetus to why we're dealing with this. Land management is the first place we deal with this, and we're not the landowners on any of this. So any response, Paris? And if not, that's fine.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I strongly agree, and also that is the intent of the Regional Invasive Species Working Group, is to provide that regional advocacy role. So it's great to hear the clarity coming from the board about one of the positions that is of a strong interest. So yes, heard, and I'll pass it on, but and also Director Vandenberg and Director Hewitt can also sit there. So yes, thank you.
Thank you. Director McFadden.
Yeah, quick question that I probably know an answer to, but cannot pull it out of my brain right now. LGCAP is funding from where and what does it stand for?
Through the chair, it's Local Government Climate Action Plan.
Oh,
So it's the former CARE funds.
it's in there somewhere. I just couldn't remember. Thank you.
It's provincial funding. Okay, motion's on the floor. We've discussed it. Seeing no one else.
I believe that Susan wanted to speak. She had her hand up.
Oh, normally she'd use chat. Did you have your hand up, Director Hewitt?
My hand was just up to second the motion because I didn't hear
Oh.
a second. That was it. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Hewitt. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. 3.2, Area K Dog Control, Director Weatherhead.
I'll pass the motion.
Thank you. You'll move the motion?
Read it out.
It's okay. First motion, there are different weights, so we'll just do them one motion at a time. Second, thank you, Director Glenn. Discussion. That was a lot of work. All right, all those in favor? Opposed, carried, and your second motion?
Yeah.
Motion, seconds. Thank you, Director McLaren. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Thank you. Committees and commissions for information are just received, so you can see what's going on. With recommendations, 4.2.1 Water Services Committee. Director Newell, you're the chair of that committee, correct?
Yes,
Do you want to move the motions?
I do. I'll move the first motion that approves the 2024 water and wastewater system acquisition plan as amended.
Second, Director Jackman, discussion. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Yes, sorry, participants only waited. And for any members of the public who are curious, when we have committee recommendations, you don't see a lot of discussion at this table. It happens in the committee. And if you ever have questions, please do reach out to your director. Number 2, participants only waited. Director
I'll
Noel.
move the recommendation that is rescinding of a previous resolution.
Thank you. We're rescinding the moratorium here. Second, Director Weatherhead. Discussion?
Chair,
Yes.
we feel a small tremor with that rescinding.
It's a lot of work.
Onslaught of incoming applications in the next few months.
I see Uli turned on your video. Is there anything you wanted to say?
No, just in case there were questions other
Okay.
than the tremor comments.
Yeah. Might be the one time the province is listening to us. I don't, yeah, sorry, that came out the wrong way. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. All right, we will now evaluate taking on water systems and wastewater. Oh, no, yes. CSLAC, Director Popoff, you want to move motions?
Actually, it's Director Main is the chair now.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks for catching me up. Director May.
Move the recommendation that RDCK Board direct staff to establish a collaborative working group on regional transportation and partner with regional industry, local governments, and community organizations. And further, that up to $15,000 be used from S100 General Administration OGCAP. And further, that the working group terms of reference come back to CSLAC for review.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Cunningham. Discussion. Director Lochtenberg.
Just a question regarding the way that CSLAC will work with the West Kootenay Transit Committee, given West Kootenay Transit Committee, it's my understanding, based on what Director Page has told me, it's sort of a broader mandate. So I'm just curious how those two committees would work together, and is the West Kootenay Transit Committee maybe need to broaden its mandate a little bit?
I see Paris, are you still there? This was a question raised in committee, so I'm just going to see if Paris can answer it because she answered it there. Go ahead, Paris.
Yes, thank you through the chair. Yes, and it was, we intend to include it in the terms and understand through Tom Jewell how best. We haven't pursued it. It was a question that arose at CSLAC and we haven't had a chance to speak to Tom Jewell yet, but our intention is to liaison and ensure that there's shared information and continuity, but not overlap.
So there's actually 3 different groups, including this one now. You have your West Kootenay Transit Committee, which is the Kootenay Boundary, Central Kootenay, those broader ones. And then you also have West Transit Committee, which is the governance committee that is held at the RDCK, which is new this year. Right. And this one, with the BC Transit mandates, they're pretty specific to what they can discuss. So this is looking at those outside the box conversations, and it's going to be more advocacy related or looking at opportunities. And then should it move into a service or an actual project, then you would move it into the governance and or the West Kootenay Transit one. Correct? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the next one, Director May.
The next recommendation, that the Community Works Fund application submitted by RDCK for the project titled Weimer Watershed Natural Asset Management Plan in the amount of $60,000 be approved, that the funds be dispersed from Community Works funds allocated to Electoral Area G and allocated to S105, Community Sustainable Living Service, and further that the 2024 financial plan for S105 CSLAC be amended to increase community works grants by $60,000 and increase contract services expense by $60,000.
Second, Director Cunningham, thank you. Discussion? All those in, oh, sorry, Director Hewitt, I see you. Go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. This probably is nitpicky, but should it not read Canada Community Building Fund versus Community Works? Isn't that the new terminology?
Through the chair, I understand that Community Works is a subset of the Canada Building Fund. There's other streams within it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank
Director
you.
Hewitt. Okay, good catch. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. And the third recommendation?
The third recommendation, that the board direct staff to submit a joint application to the Watershed Security Fund for water sustainability project within the Yakaniki, Amakis, Preston Valley in the amount of $150,000. And that if successful, grant funds be allocated to S105 CSLAC. And further, briefing notes are provided to elected officials and when elected officials are engaged with the chief and council. This is really strangely worded, but it's that those briefing notes be shared with the regional district elected officials when they're shared with the Yakanuki elected officials.
Second, it's also when there is engagement with chief and council that elected officials at the RDCK are also engaged so that we have the same orders of government engaging.
Yeah.
So it's on the floor. Further discussion?
And it's participants only weighted.
Yes, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Just noting on that one, we can take it away, but participants only means that the city of Creston would not be involved in that vote. So it's just an interesting. Town, oh, sorry.
Point of order.
Yeah.
Town of Creston is thinking about becoming the city of Creston. Maybe that's why it's on everybody's mind.
Oh, okay.
Today and yesterday, it's kind of permeating.
I thought you were gonna say they're considering joining the sustainability service.
That would be
That's-
nice.
We're not there yet.
Okay. All right, and now we're at West Transit Services Committee. So this is our newest committee of governance. So just for Director Lockenberg to know where this one comes from. And who chairs this one? It's Director Hewitt. Go ahead.
Just as a matter of process, there are 7 recommendations. Can they be moved as a block? They're all participants only weighted, or do they have to be addressed separately?
Through the chair, I think you could move the first 6 as a block. I would move the 7th one separately though.
Okay, 1 to 6 of the block, and then I'll ask if anyone wants to pull one.
Okay. So then then I'll move that items, resolutions 1 through 6, be moved as a block unless there is one to be pulled for individual discussion.
Second.
Second, thank you. Do any directors want to pull any of these individual motions for discussion? Again, good discussion at the committee. So, okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then the 7th motion, go ahead, Director Hewitt.
Okay, and that one is that board direct staff to provide a service case analysis regarding amalgamating S237 Transit Castlegar and area, S238 Transit North Shore and Slocan Valley, and S239 Transit Kootenay Lake West.
Second.
Thank you, Director Main. Discussion? Director Lockwood.
Thank you, through the chair. My only question would be, is do we know approximately how much a service case analysis would cost?
Through the chair, something like this would be all staff time. So I'd have to check with Tom and Mike as to what the hours would be, but this isn't something that we consult.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Jackman?
I guess one thought as well is that, this might presume all 3 are amalgamated, but there may also be a bit of analysis on any 2 out of the 3 that might make a lot more sense if that was part of the service case analysis.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Director Vandenberg.
Yes, thanks. This is an interesting exercise. So just for clarity, is this the way that you move services together, is through an analysis so you're applying for amalgamation, you go through an analysis. The result of that analysis is the pros and cons perhaps. and some recommendations that something would work, something wouldn't work, because this is new. This is the first time I've seen this. So just, yeah, interest to me that, of the procedure.
Yeah, through the chair, this is actually the second time we've tried to take a look at how we could amalgamate transit service. We used to have 7 or 8 transit services, now we have 4. So we've gone through this process before in terms of trying to amalgamate them. But yeah, I think transit is a little bit unique in the ability to do this because of the way the service is delivered and the way that you've seen Tom bring some suggestions forward in terms of how the cost can be allocated to the different participants. So it does provide a little bit more opportunity to do something like this. But yeah, this is definitely a way to try to make things more efficient and just reduce the number of services in general.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Nelson and District Rec Commission number 5 minutes.
I could take the liberty of removing that motion,
Go for it.
the member of it.
Yes.
Yes, Chair Page isn't here, so.
Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead.
The Nelson District Rec Commission supports in principle the pre-development work by Nelson Cares Society to determine the feasibility of a potential workforce / below market housing project from the Nelson and District Community Complex footprint through to 824 Front Street in Nelson, and further that the feasibility study identify how recreation expansion of the Nelson and District Community Complex could be incorporated into the workforce below market housing project so as to include the feasibility.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Dr. Graham. Vandenberg on the list. I just wanted to check in quickly on this one. This is a letter indicating support in principle, but is there actual staff time and or finances that we're committing to this feasibility study? And who's doing the feasibility study? I see Joe's online.
Through the chair, Nelson Cares is doing the feasibility study and they've hired Cover Architecture to do that work. And yes, we are supporting them as staff for the pieces in regards to recreation in their feasibility study.
So, thank you, Graham. Just a supplemental to that, Joe, is generally we would indicate the in-kind time we're committing to something that's outside of our own internal work. Do you have an idea of what that in-kind time is?
Through the chair, no. This is actually part of a project that we are already working on. We are already working on a campus study for the area, for the complex in particular. So this work is actually fitting within a work plan item already.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, directors, I went ahead of you. Vandenberg and then Graham.
Thank you, through the chair, and that was exactly where I was going to go with it. But the in-kind portion should be nailed down a little bit more. So perhaps we can get an update on it because it's about our work plan, and we're spending a lot of time really thinking through our work plan. So this is the stuff that gets layered on, but we should have better, clearer understanding as to the commitment involved by staff. So something for the future to discuss.
Thank you. Director Graham.
Thank you through the chair to staff. So this property, to my understanding, has 2 or 3 lots that is owned by the city. And then there's 2 lots that are owned by the regional district. And I'm just wondering for clarity to the board, are all of these lots being considered in this study or this pre-development, or is it just the lots that are owned by the city?
Through the chair, the resolution, the way it reads, it includes land. It's not a lot because the lot is actually one lot that the NDCC sits on. So it includes land inside that lot to be considered in this feasibility study. And then the rest of it is City of Nelson property.
Okay, Director Hewitt and then Director Lund.
Thank you through the chair. I'm just wondering if the motion is worded correctly, because it sounds more like a statement than a motion. Right? It just says that the Recreation Committee supports in principle. What's the action? The and further has an action, but the first is just a statement that commission supports that. Are we like writing a letter of support or providing? Yeah, just a question.
Thank you. Joe, is it a letter of support? Is it just this motion goes to Nelson Carrots to let them know we support what you're already doing?
So through the chair, so the intent was to provide scope for Nelson Cares for their feasibility studies so that they could know what all the property was that they could consider in this feasibility study. And what's going to happen with the feasibility study, they're actually going to be coming back to the Nelson and District Recreation Commission on July 31st with the preliminary findings of that feasibility study. And I think at that time is when the commission would provide a letter of support based upon those findings, if they still are convinced that this might be a good process forward. So they're going to be getting, the Nelson District Recreation Commission will be getting an update at their regular meeting on the 31st. And that is where I think they'll make that decision on whether they actually support the project based upon this initial feasibility work that has been done since June to this point now. So I don't think this is for a letter at this point in time. This was just saying that they could look at this property as part of their feasibility work, and they're bringing that back to commission on the 31st.
So to clarify, it's we own the land and the complex that they're looking at, so we had to indicate we support their assessment.
Correct.
I still think the note on staff time is lacking in this motion, but Director Hewitt, does that answer your question?
Well, I understand the intent, but I just, because it doesn't have an action that the board communicate to Nelson Cares that the commission supports. Just, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like a complete motion to me. It's got an and further, but the first part doesn't actually have an action. It just states that there is support, but how is it communicating that support? Which I think it should have an action in the first part. But that's just me. I'm not staff, so I'm not sure. Perhaps this is a sufficient motion.
I think that the catch I would make on it, Joe, is that this is indicating the commission supports it, whereas if it's at the board table, it's the board supporting it. The commission doesn't, you wouldn't, if you had a letter from the commission that was specific to a service, you wouldn't necessarily need to come to the board. So that's the one change I would make. And I do agree, it was kind of confusing to understand what this was. Joe, do you have further response to that?
Through the chair, no, if it's the board supporting, it was intended just to be able to allow the feasibility study work to continue.
Okay.
Sorry,
I've got, go ahead.
Through the chair, maybe there's one other piece of clarification. The city of Nelson, there's actually a corresponding resolution from the city of Nelson where they're providing actually, so the regional district is not providing any financial support for the feasibility study. The properties that were originally looked at are property that are jointly looked at for a possible recreational expansion and also housing. So those two things came together at one time. So the intent here, the city of Nelson passed a resolution that said, yes, you can look at their lots that they own if the commission supports in principle that you include those lots in your feasibility study. So that is actually what the commission is responding to that resolution from the city of Nelson. So all that the motion is intending to do is to tell Nelson Cares, yes, we support in principle that you're looking at these lots in your feasibility study. In that scope, that is to include how a recreational facility could be included in it. That is what they're going to get back on July 31st. So that's always been the intent of the flow of this.
Thank you. I have Director Lund and then Director Cunningham.
Yeah, to me, I'm totally in support of this motion, and I'm grateful that it did come to the board. I'm just curious if the feasibility will come to the board if it looks like there's potential. Through the chair. Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, through the chair, through the commission, it would.
Director Cunningham.
Thank you. If we didn't give this permission, then we would squash their project. So they wouldn't need to spend the money on a feasibility study. To staff.
Through the chair, that would be correct.
Thank you.
I don't think there's debate on not supporting it. It's trying to understand what we're doing. And so it's just clarifying. This motion was a little confusing. So I'm not hearing anyone opposing the support. It's just, what does that support look like and being specific with it? So seeing no one else on the list, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. And Joe, just noting, you said the feasibility study will come back to through the commission. Can we ensure it comes to the board as well?
Yes, through the chair would come through the board, the commission's minutes.
Okay, thank you. 4.2.5, all recreation committee, that is. If I'm really off my game today, go ahead.
It's okay, sorry, where are we at?
4.2.5.
Again.
Okay, the board directs staff to bring forward a report to the board which outlines the necessary regulatory, operational, financial, and communication steps and proposed schedule for implementing sub-regional service committees for all of the different services.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Director Main. Discussion. Again, we did go through this one deeply at all rec. Director Lund.
And I apologize, I was not there. Area H and Slocan's no longer in the recreation service. Just curious what needs to be on there.
So through the chair, this isn't just about recreation. It started with recreation because for our shared services committee at this point, recreation is definitely the biggest service that is spoken about for the two that are relatively active, Crested Valley and the North Kootenay Lake shared services committees. So the conversation started with recreation, but really this is about governance of all shared services between those participants and seeing how we can develop committees that might work. And it's not a commitment to develop the committees, it's really just to start the work to say, here's how it would work, are the directors interested? It's a conversation that started at the table about 10 years ago, and only Crested Valley and North Kootenay Lake, as I mentioned, picked it up and have run with it. And the conversation just started up again about how these discussions could be better had at committee tables.
Thank you, very clear.
Very handy as you're leading the budget. You've got shared services. That's I went to look at Susan, but you're not there. You're there. Further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And yeah.
So just an administrative point for the directors, if you're not aware, just because I saw Director McFadden searching for the item that we're on. If you get caught up in the conversation and your e-scribe gets away from you, you can click in the top left corner. There's 3 lines in a circle. Click that once, and then you can scroll down to current item, and you click the current item. Christine's tracking it on the master side of eScribe, and it jumps you right to where we are in the agenda. You don't need to scroll through it.
Thank
Okay.
you. Top left-hand corner, there's 3
There's a
lines.
circle with 3 lines in it. Click that once, and you scroll down to current item, and it'll take you right to where we are in the agenda.
All right. Thanks. Second motion, go ahead, Director McFadden.
That staff recommend to the board opportunities to convert commissions and committees related to recreation to community advisories in order to increase efficiencies in service governance while maintaining the ability for public to engage with the RDCK.
Thank you. Second, thank you, McLaren Co. Director Jackman.
Yeah, and I think this is important. We talk about converting, but we may have to establish in some places these kind of advisories. When you read the master plans, like for parks and trails, it's kind of huge undertaking we did years back for each sort of sub-region. We say right in there, we're gonna come back to the public. We're gonna talk to you before things happen. Apparently, we didn't quite come back on one item in area A. And I bet you it took 100 hours of staff time. I got 52 questions from one block of a few people, numerous other questions, staff are trying to. So this is quite important. It's only recreation, but we've spent $60,000-$70,000 on master plans in some areas and made the promise at the end of it, we're gonna come back to you. And we have no effective mechanism to come back to clusters of community that really want to. So I hope everybody will look at this as a positive thing that will save our staff time. Because the advisory process is a lot easier to manage, I understand administratively, than actual commissions and committees. So I'm optimistic.
Thank you. And our water services community advisory committees is a good template to look at because that's essentially what we're looking at hearing for recreation. Director Main, you had further comment or question?
Yes, while I support this, I also just want to note that we have to be careful to not rush this second part of it and engage with the existing committees and commissions, or else we're going to wind up with some very irate and dissatisfied constituents. So I just want to caution, in addition to what Director Jackman said, that we have to walk cautionly on that. Thank you.
Thank you. At the All Rec Commission, I do recall it being a pretty deep conversation regarding how would this work and, you know, raising the concerns that we're wanting to ensure our residents stay engaged and making sure the mechanism is good for that. So do you have a question?
No, just a comment on what Director Main said.
Okay.
I don't know if she was present at that meeting when we discussed this, but the problem being is our commissions, we have a set bylaw and rules and regulations that they abide by. And we had problems getting formed, so we couldn't conduct any business.
Yes.
And an advisory commission doesn't have those set rules and regulations.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Rindell Commission, Director Jackman.
Yes, thank you. This is all, I think the wording should be tweaked just a little bit, because we have Rindell in brackets and then commission.
Yeah.
So, but I move that the board appoint the following individual to the Rindell Commission of Management for a term to end, July 31st, 2025. Should be December 31st, I believe. So, and that person is Lynn Grant, resident of Rindell.
Not Lynn Crana, Rindell. Rindell, sorry. Okay. All right, second. Thank you, Director Brown. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Crescent Valley Services Committee. Who would like to take those? I think.
And this is all vote.
Yes, go ahead.
Is that the board approved 2024 financial plan for S174 Cemetery, Creston A, B, and C be amended to increase grant by $3,500. Decrease accumulated surplus by $3,500 for the 2024 grant to the Lister Community Cemetery, and further the board approve a payment $3,500 to the Lister Community Cemetery subject to receipt of required documentation being submitted to the RDCK Finance Department.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Discussion. I'll just note it's interesting to add in this required documentation because that's a requirement regardless if it's an emotion, correct?
Yes, but through the chair, since this was, the financial service grants come in June, and that's a process in and of itself. And just because this one's on its own, we wanted to make sure that it's very clear that it's not just directing the payment to be made, that it's held until that documentation is submitted, just like the rest of them.
Okay, great. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Joint Resource Recovery Committee. Directors, I do want to, when we start engaging on motions that come from committees where the committees had robust conversation, if we can I'm not gonna try and stifle discussion, but let's not repeat discussion. We spent a lot of time on those, so new questions, things like that are good. Again, I won't stifle it, but just a guidance to please focus on questions and things that were not addressed at the committee level. Over to you, Director Newell, as you chaired that committee yesterday.
Through the chair, can we do it as a block or? Can we do them individually?
Through the chair, because they're agreements, I would recommend doing them individually, just in case any amendments need to come
Yeah.
down.
All right, well then let's bear with the process, and first resolution is that the board approve the RDCK enter into a service agreement with at source recycling systems for the delivery of many things for the maximum value of $370,747. And further, that the chair and corporate officer be authorized to sign the necessary documents, and further that the cost be paid from service S188 West Resource Recovery.
Thank you. Second, Director Popoff. Thank you. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Second.
Second resolution that the board approve the RDCK extend the goods and services agreement number 2021-70 END with GFL Environmental for the provision of waste hauling services for Slocan, Roseberry in the future, and a Cusp transfer station for 1 year, extending it from October 1st to September 30th, 2025, at an estimated value of $105,109, and further the signing, etc.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Popoff. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Number 3, that the board approve the RDCK enter into consulting services agreement with Ursus Heritage Consulting, the completion archaeological impact assessment at Budashina landfill, total cost $67,680, and it be paid from S188.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Director Hanegraaff. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Number 4, the board approve the RDCK extend the agreement number with Kootenay Park Marine Limited for the lease of land associated with that recycling depot until from August 1st through to the end of December 2024, and further fees are paid from A117 Central Recycling.
Good. Okay. Second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And fifth one.
And the fifth resolution is that the board sends a formal response letter to the Ministry of Environment as per the July 12th, the discussion paper and report, and there still might be a couple of minutes for people to provide feedback through to staff, having read the letter.
Second.
Thank you. It's a good note to make that I believe Amy's going to send me the letter tomorrow for signature. So if you have further comments you want to make, as long as they're not, yesterday would have been the time to say I'm not in support of anything in there. So now it's just any further edits, get them to Amy today.
That's a very good letter. All right, so there it is.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. It's a really good letter that I will end up making sure folks can see because of all the recycling conversations that came up throughout budget. It really outlines what the advocacy has been, and we also referenced items we'll take back to the ministry on our annual UBCM meeting with them. Okay, 4.2.9, Rec Commission number 4, Dr. Weatherhead.
I'll vote that the board approve the payment of the following grants from Recreation Commission number 4, services 228, 2024 budget for music in the park, $2,500, and the corporation of the village in Newcastle for $1,989.
Second, McLaren Co. Thank you. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Area C.
That the board appoint the following individual to Area C Advisory Planning and Heritage Commission for a term to end December 31st, 2026. Roger Chadwick.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Jackman. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Grandview.
That the board appoints following individuals to the Grandview Water Service Community Advisory Committee for a term to end December 31st, 2026. James Whitlow and Robin Cook.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Hannah. Discussion? Bless you. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And the Regional Advisory Committee. I can that one. Thank you, Director Lund. This is appointing Herb Alex to the Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee and sending a letter of thank you to Clayton McCann. Second. Thank you, Dumas. Discussion? Lockwood, go ahead.
Thank you. So I know this is nothing about the appointment. This is about this committee and how confusing it is. I'm getting calls from people on the committee not knowing what they're doing. So I have reached out to Mike Morrison. He helped me understand a little bit more. Then I spoke with another director and I'm really concerned that something that the Village of Salmo thought that this committee was gonna be the one that actually looked at our community of what we owned and stuff like that. And that's not the case. So I'm not sure where we bring this back to make sure that everybody that signed up into the committee understands. If there's a meeting that all the municipalities that were joining, that they get to come to have, so it's not explained by staff over and over and over again. But Mike did say it's very confusing for staff, and it's confusing for everybody else. So I just wanted to make that note for everybody that municipality that joined, thinking that they were going to be looking at them as a whole, at a community as a whole. That's not really how the committee was set up. So I just wanted to bring that forward and can have that discussion offline to continue it.
Thank you. So I have Director Davidoff on the list, but I just want to check if it's not on the membership, let's pass this motion and then I'll go to you, Director Davidoff. Is it the person being appointed or on the membership motion or on the committee as a whole?
Committee as a whole.
Okay, so let's finish this motion then. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's okay. Go ahead, Director Davidoff.
Yeah, I just echo what Director Lockwood has stated. I think the provincial government mandated us to do something and then passed off kind of developing how we're going to do it and what the interface will be between the RDCK and municipalities that are doing this work that would like to work with the RDCK. And I'm a member of that committee, and I said to Director Lockwood when we chatted, I said, if media got a hold of me and said, what's your role on this committee? What is the purpose and function of this committee? How does the interface work? I couldn't answer those questions. So I was seriously considering basically withdrawing from the committee and not being on it, because I think we only had like 1 or 2 meetings. And if staff has the same concerns, then we need a lot more guidance from the provincial government or a workshop or something, because I don't want to stay in a committee where it's pretty much dysfunctional.
So we're entering a conversation that's not on the agenda. I think what we do is we highlight this as an issue and ask for Mike or staff to bring it back as a discussion item. I don't want us to get into discussion when it's not an item on our agenda. Not good governance in that perspective. It's really good input. Please send it into staff. And Mike, if you're listening, can you just let us know how and what might come back to us? Can you bring something back to us?
Yes, certainly I can prepare an update for the board with regards to the work of that committee and how the municipalities tie into that.
Thank you. So Vandenberg and Cunningham, if you can please send in your questions and comments, and then we'll have a discussion on the agenda. This is not on the agenda.
No, I understand, Chair. My question actually referred to Mike, fact that does it have a terms of reference that we can use?
Yes, it does.
That was my question.
Yeah, Mike, can you circulate the terms of reference as well, please?
Yes, will do.
Thank you. Okay, folks, it's helpful when we get into these discussions that we have a staff report to back and that staff are ready to discuss the bigger topics. So that's why I'm suggesting we don't dive deep into that. Okay, director's report. So we don't have verbal this month, but I did want to note, you'll notice the attachment around external committee list and our policy. I will admit, I don't always do this myself, but it's a friendly reminder that when the board appoints you to an external committee, please report what you can, even if they're all confidential, which both LGCCRT and Columbia Basin Trust, until they do their board highlights, they're both confidential meetings. So I do understand sometimes you can't report out too much, but you know, at the LGCCRT, we provide any of those updates. So if you see your name on this list, and you should know because you're attending those meetings, please provide some reports back to the board on what you can, or link to whatever it is, the work that is public information. So that's why those were attached. Director Main.
Yeah, I have a correction to make on the list of appointments, which are that I am no longer on the board of directors. Director Hewitt has moved from standing committee to being a director, and the time frame should be June 30th on both of those, because.
Okay. Can you please email that to, I believe it would be Angela?
Yeah, and you can copy this.
Okay.
Okay, copy Christine as well. So if you see errors, please send those to Angela and Christine. We can provide an updated list next month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jackman?
Well, similar concern, the ATVLG, I haven't been on the executive for a handful of years now. And I had asked not too long ago, I think it would have been, you know, earlier December last, when we were looking at this list. UBCM needs to confirm if they even think that group is ever going to be resurrected.
Right.
Small
water system.
Yeah, I will send another separate note in, but UBCM hasn't called us together for years.
I think since Shadrach was in the seat.
Andy was one of the ones in.
Yeah. McLaren Co.
Thanks, Chair. Just, I will happily move or second this motion. I just wanted to note that the Columbia River Treaty AIP was just dropped a week ago.
Yes, so no motion to be moved. This is just all received for information.
No, to move to postpone the director's reports.
Oh, we're not doing verbal this month. Yeah. Thank you. And yes, again, it's not an item on our agenda, but the agreement in principle on the Columbia River Treaty was dropped on Monday, Tuesday, recently. We're not talking about it here. Just FYI, read all of the information about it. Okay, correspondence. Would anyone like to pull? Oh, sorry, there's a motion first. Let's start with 5.1. Somebody. Thank you, Papa. Okay. That the board send a letter to support Living Lakes Canada for their application to investment agriculture in water infrastructure program fund for Columbia Basin Aquifer Vulnerability Study, associated groundwater supply monitoring, and groundwater related public education. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Jackman, then Vandenberg.
End up being the same general thing. We've been asked to contribute little bits of money here and there to support monitoring in geographic areas. Question is Paris monitoring sort of they've got a, you know, an outward facing database. I've looked at it the odd time. Is staff monitoring it, and would it be too much work the next couple of months to kind of see what is or is not being monitored where we are right now? You know, like canyon listers, hotspot for aquifers. Where else in the central Kootenays are they even looking right now? I'm more than a bit curious.
Definitely worth noting. There's a couple different folks and they've changed names as well. So I've lost track of who's doing what. Paris, I don't see you had 85 was your number. That's what you're titled as. Okay, Stuart will follow up on that. Does that work for you? Vandenberg.
Thank you, Chair. Same as Director Jackman is. So doing the research on Living Lakes Canada, getting involved with us locally in RDCK, particularly in our subregion in Creston, and a relationship and an agreement now with a Lower Kootenay band for collecting data with the river. Where are we getting this information? How are we getting this information? We're being asked for a letter of support, but yet what value is it for us to appreciate that which they're trying to do? And because it does affect us, it does affect our alternative water study that we're working on. But if there's not two-way flow of communication with the work that they're doing, I don't understand the value of this.
So I think a good starting point, we'll have staff come back. We've asked Stuart, we'll follow up with Paris on getting that kind of who's doing what, when, and where. The Watershed Governance Initiative includes story mapping that identifies different data points and what's coming in and where things are. So it's a good baseline to start with to look at that. And then we'll have staff come back and give us the overview on those things. The watershed planning for Yakinuki and Makis, which we just approved to apply for, that would be much more specific, and that would be led by the two entities which we've indicated, the RDCK and Yakinuki and Makis. So that's going to be more detailed and more specific to those Creston Valley interests. The watershed monitoring and whatnot, we'll have staff come back and give us a more lay of the land. We also have organizations up the lake that are now through Living Lake that are doing water monitoring. So yeah, there's a lot of different moving pieces. And I did see pop off. I just wanted to see if Paris didn't pop off. Pop back on, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This motion is a good motion because the groundwater supply is diminishing with, for lack of a better word, climate change or the extreme climate events, low snowpack, etc. I've had a few calls on wells that are not dropping out, but the water level is dropping. So it'd be good to have study in that information.
Thank you. So this is a letter of support. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, 5.2 and 5.3. Does anyone need to pull any of these? If it's 5.3, we're not doing it. Go ahead. It's just.
They're focusing on Castle Gorge right now, and additional areas of tunnel house. How do you get to be an additional area? Turkeys are a huge problem in my area.
I would contact the contact center.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
It's also, if you know, the date started in 2019. It was, I believe, Mayor Duff who signed it originally. So there's some gaps there, but we are not getting into turkey talk here. Sorry.
But you asked.
I know, because I have to, but it was definitely
okay.
Talk to ministry and
deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Send you some coyotes.
Coyotes.
Or maybe some coyotes.
Okay, we're not going there. I was about to say something, stop it. Communication 6.1 to 6.4. Does anybody want to pull anything for discussion? Cunningham, which one?
So, 6.4, but actually perhaps speaking to all of them generally, and specifically.
Can you just hold on? I just want to see who's pulling what, and then I'll go in the order.
Go ahead.
So anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Cunningham.
Our staff are monitoring these things, aren't we, with the proposed BC timber sales forest stewardship plan. I think we're doing part of that already for the staff, or are we not?
So you're referencing 6.4, and that's the Columbia Shuswap, or sorry, Okanagan Columbia
Forest stewardship plan,
FSP.
okay, and
Sankita, do you have a response to that? Or Director Weatherhead or McLaren Co, do you know, did that one go through? An FSP would generally go to the area director. Sankita came on, go ahead.
So the question was, through the chair, the question was if the forest stewardship plan for Area G, sorry.
Area K, it's Okanagan, Columbia timber sales, which would generally it overlaps around the Arrow area. So I'm assuming it's Weatherhead and McLaren Co.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we received it as a referral, but if we did, we would be processing it. And if it included several of the electoral areas, I believe we bring it back to the board. I'll check with staff here.
Okay. Stuart?
So through the chair, we did receive this referral. It touches the very edge of Area K.
It's way up at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, through the chair, it's not even on this side of the Galena Bay Ferry, or it's almost like it borders.
There's no residents.
Yeah, so staff did respond through our process. If it's a single rural area, then it's applied based on our bylaws and standard concerns. If it's 3 or more areas, then we would bring it to RAC. That's our current policy on reference.
Okay,
Exactly what I wanted to know.
all right. Christine, just letting you know, Director Fike joined from New Denver. Director Fike, let's check your sound. I saw you come on. Wait, where'd you go? There you are. Can you hear us, Director Fike? Dana also just joined. Dana, can you hear us okay?
Yes, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we'll just check back in with Director Fike in a second. Accounts payable for information, any questions? Okay. Bylaw 2923, define area D. It's me. 8.1, very excited about this one. Any questions first, because this is adoption? Director Weatherhead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have to find the question. I was just confused in the wording of something and thought it was interesting. About the numbers of respondents you had on, I didn't know how that worked.
We had one response. It was actually from the Ryandale area, so it was disqualified as a response. So that's why the numbers look like, you know, we had one response, but then none valid because they weren't in the actual service area. Okay. I'll just note, thank you very much to David Zayance and our GIS team. We will have very specific, the roads, because when we use our mapping for our bylaws, it's always GIS that'll hold the actual service details in terms of mapping. So I appreciate that. I did get that clarified through staff. So I'm good with that. I will move the motion for adoption. Second. Director Hewitt wants to second, so. Thank you to the Village of Castle and all residents who have been subsidizing our first responder service outside of the fire service for so many years. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. All right, 2955, 2956, and 2958, Bill 44, which is, thank you, Dana. Now I know what item you're here for. Do we have any questions? We ready to move a motion? C is first. Go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. I am not extremely comfortable, and I probably should preface this by saying that Dan and I spent some quality time going through this. And she's gotten back to me very, very well, very thoughtfully, but I'm still having a struggle with what the intent of Bill 44 is and what our staff is proposing that we ought to be doing. In the sense of the maximum number of density on a given area in relation to forcing it into a subdivision application. So I don't know what to. I would like to move this along, but I almost need to have assurance that we still have some opportunity to deep dive into this. That if there is an opportunity to modify or change the OCP in Area C, that I can do that, not have to wait 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years to do so. So I'm stuck on this, and
Dana or Nelson?
I think it's, yeah, I understand Director Vanderberg's concerns. I think it's okay to move forward and have to see how it goes and come back. That's kind of how it works sometimes with bylaw amendments, especially under this tight deadline. I can think of another example with some of the agricultural policy things where we've made some bylaw changes, and then as we've enacted them in the real world, we've come back and tinkered with them, and that's, I think, totally valid and an okay route to go.
So to clarify the process around if there needs to be changes specifically to your comprehensive land use bylaw, which I think is what it is. The whole planning process, a full review is that 8 to 10 year timeline in terms of all of them, but specific amendments can happen when necessary. You know, a couple months depending on staff time. So yes, if there's tweaks that are needed because this identifies something, wait, that's not working, you don't have to get in the planning full review lineup for that. Is that correct, Anna?
That's right. And I think as we review the subdivision and development servicing bylaw, that might be a good time to kind of revisit some of these density provisions that we've included. Same as, you know, as we wrap up other projects like the complete communities assessment, that might be another good time to have some more data to reevaluate in these changes. So I don't think you'd have to wait for a full review. I think we'll see how it goes, and also we'll have some more information in the future from other projects.
Well, if I may, and my apologies to the board, Dana did just get back to me with my last set of questions, so we hadn't had a chance to discuss this. Thank you, Dana, for pointing this out. That's really important for me. So then with that all said, understanding that I do have a process that I can follow, which I will be doing, I would like to suggest all vote that electoral area C land use amendment bylaw number 2955 2024, year 2024 being the bylaw to amend electoral area C land use bylaw number 2317 in 2013 be read a third as amended.
Thank you. Second, further discussion?
No, well, no, certainly.
Good. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The motion for adoption. Go ahead, Director Vandenberg.
That I'll vote that the electoral area C land use bylaw number 2955 being a bylaw to amend electoral C land use bylaw number 2317 be hereby adopted, and the chair and the corporate officer be authorized to sign the same.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Jackman. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, I will move mine for third as amended. And again, I want to thank Dana. It was really great to work through some details on this one with you. You were very helpful and quite concise. So thank you, Dana. I move the motion for third reading as amended for Area D's comprehensive land use bylaw. Do I have a second? Thank you, Popoff. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I'll move adoption of Area D's club. Do I have a second? Thank you, Popoff. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Well, this is the one that's multiple. Who would like to take it? Kendra.
Okay, the regional district of the Central Kootenay zoning amendment bylaw number 2958/2024 being bylaw to amend regional district of Central Kootenay zoning bylaw number 1675/2004 be read a third time as amended.
Thank you. Second, Newell. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And your motion to adopt.
And I just wanted to join the chorus of people saying thank you to Dana as well. We had a long discussion and, couldn't agree to disagree, but walk away friends. So it was all good. She was very helpful. So I move, that the amendment be adopted as presented.
Second, thank you, Newell. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. David, off that was adoption, so we don't discuss. Do you have a question? You're muted.
I was just going to echo what Director Hanegraaff had said about all the work that has been done on this by staff in such a short period of time. And also want to make it very clear to any of my constituents that have a concern about this, there is a way of amending things if we need to, if something obviously is not going to work. So hopefully that's out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Davidoff. Dana, do you feel the appreciation? I hope you do. You did a lot of work very quickly.
I feel the love. Thank you. And it's also my last board meeting, so I feel great.
Oh, I thought you were leaving soon. Thank you. But just for a short time, right?
Just a year and a half.
Yeah. You'll be busy. We appreciate you. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks,
guys. Folks, we have 8.3 next. I'm wondering if we want to do our morning break at this moment, because I believe 8.3 is going to be a pretty big discussion. We good with that? Sorry, I had 3 glasses of water before we started. So if we're okay with that, we'll take our morning break. Thank you. 10 minutes.
Self-serving.
Thank you, everybody. We can please take your seats. I just want to track Director Fike. I did see you join. Can you hear us? Please unmute if you can hear us, and I'll check our sound. Director Fike, are you there? Okay, I don't hear him, so maybe if you could just put a note in chat and let us know when he can hear us. The phones aren't good. Okay, folks, so there is a lot happening on the side. We might be pausing intermittently to deal with some other things. At this time, we are at 8.3. We have everybody back in the room. So I know Director Popoff, you had put your hand up before we took a break. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm looking at that local conservation fund. ARH joined back in 2022, but the 10-year review is starting in 2014 when the other ones were. So ARH does not have a separate bylaw. We're part of that bylaw. Now, I probably defer to staff to explain why this motion's on the table to remove that 10-year review, where the Local Government Act basically states that parcel tax has a start and an end. But I can possibly explain it because I did a little bit of investigation, but I would defer to Tom Dool to explain the process on it. The second issue I have is putting a bylaw like that on the table without directors having a review of that bylaw. Short time period is, we only had a few days to review it, is if we do first and second reading on that bylaw for an opportunity for directors to provide comments and get comments from their constituents on that and then bring it back at the next board table. So that's the motion that I'll be making on this bylaw, but I defer to Tom Dool to explain to us why it's being removed.
Okay, well, I do want to note, we don't need to repeat what's in the report. We've all read the report, so we understand the process. I think, yes, first and second would mean we don't need to move on it now, but we can get in the queue and then have that discussion. What I would like identified is that at our last, we don't have a formal committee for this service. And now that we've developed even more being added to it, essentially it should have gone through a service committee and then made recommendations from that point, because we do have members joining at different times where that 10-year trigger is not aligned with that. So there's a big discussion on that. Tom, is there anything around the process that is not in the report that you would like to highlight or identify here?
Respectfully to the chair, I've captured it all in the report. I'd just like to note again that, as a regional district, there are fundamentally different requirements for regional districts than there are for municipalities. There's no kind of time constraint placed on a regional district in terms of the implementation of a permanent tax plan.
Thank you. And I know you go ahead, because I think we'll probably say the same thing. Go ahead, Director Jackman.
Okay, thank you. I think Director Popoff is on the right track for a couple of reasons. One is I sat in on every one I could of the public sessions where the promotion of this service at the outset, the advertising for it, was left in the hands of the Kootenay Conservation Program. And at each session I was at, they highlighted, if you vote this in, don't worry, it's not forever. It's going to be reviewed in 10 years. And that, to me, was the promise to the electorate that they would have a say 10 years later. Now, I appreciate, Tom Dool has pointed out we have the power to do away with that kind of thing, but this is the worst kind of thing to do, especially in what we've seen in recent years with concerns about budget and trust issues and the like, that all of a sudden three readings and adoption and quote something gone. So Director Popoff has suggested to go first and second reading. That's fine. That's about the only way to get the public's attention. This is something that could be done. Could be done next month or really soon. And then we really need to go back out. I mean, KCP, Kootenay Conservation Program, does have a lot of information. We should be able to glean from that of what we've done so far, but put it out from us, from local government, saying, here's what we've done. Here's what we've taxed you for. Here's the multiplier of the money we've leveraged. And that, like it or not, we can just continue doing that, but we'd like some feedback. And apparently this new feedback portal, I can never remember the name, Stuart will remember the name.
Hang the table.
I just actually put my hand down. So I do know what it is. That is a minimum, I think, to tell people we're on the verge of changing what we told you 10 years ago, and we at least want to listen to you. We may not act on what you say. But I really don't think we should adopt something like this right away. Understanding we could, we should just be cautious.
Okay, Tom, go ahead, but just one second. Director Fike, I see you are with us and you have video. How's your audio? I got your email. Yeah, no, it's still not working. I can't hear you, but I can see you speaking. Okay, we'll use chat for now. And we'll do what we can, and I do also understand, you might have to leave as well, so I'll just watch for that, and thanks for trying to join.
Okay,
Thank
and I
you.
should clarify, I wanted to know if third reading is preferable to second reading for any reason, I guess. I should have added that. Director Pop-Up said first and second reading, is 3 readings better, or should we end it to if we only do partial?
Okay, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Respectfully to the chair, the board may choose to remove the requirement for a tenure. The board may choose to leave that requirement for a tenure, or the board may choose to change the scope altogether of that time, or how the review could happen. Those are all within the purview of the board. Through bylaw, you have the ability to set timeframes on anything, or on any of our bylaws or expiry dates, or that sort of thing. The time sensitive issue here is actually because we have to get this information to the provincial government by no later than the end of October. This would leave the board by August to make a decision about what's before them, to recommend any changes, which would have to land in September, preferably for adoption in October. So that's really the only timeframe consideration that the board has sort of in front of them. I would also like to add that while you can put an expiry date in a bylaw, that is not a trigger for a review of taxation. A review of taxation, as the chair has pointed out, would be done through a committee that actually governs the service. That's a governance decision. This is a decision as to whether or not to get rid of this tax at that point. It is not as it sits in the bylaw, as opposed to a decision to change it, increase it, reduce it, how it funds it, that sort of thing. So that's something the board in their deliberations should take into consideration.
And the question around second to third, is there? Go ahead.
Through the chair, second reading would allow the most flexibility and provide feedback to Tom, for this, particularly the participants saying what you would like to see in the bylaw, and then we can bring back a draft in August.
Okay, so 1 second on that one. So second reading would be best. I'll come back to you for that. What I do, oh, Graham, go ahead.
Thank you. So this might just be a little bit off topic, but there was a complaint made by Area E residents in writing regarding this service. And I was just wondering if that had ever been addressed by staff.
Yeah, through the chair and Area H residents as well. Yeah, we've responded to.
It was responded to. Okay, thank you very much. Supplemental. I've had a question come in from some residents in the area that are asking the process on this, and that it's being brought forward by staff and not being brought forward by a director. And I just didn't know how to answer that. So if you could help me with that.
So through the chair, I think through Tom's research, he found that contrary to what was believed prior in terms of the mandatory time frame, it was found that actually regional districts don't need to have that time frame. So this is strictly bringing the information to the board to say you have options here when it comes to that 10-year time frame. And Tom can add to that as well.
Tom, go ahead.
Respectfully to the chair, we knew it was expiring. Initially, we looked at it like, oh, we just gotta do a renewal on this. And then once I dug into it with the Local Government Act and talked to the local government inspector, they said, you don't actually need this. This is a requirement of municipalities, not of regional districts. The Local Government Act does not apply those pieces of the community charter that apply outside of the creation of the parcel tax rule. Fundamentally, what it comes down to is we're not a taxation authority as a regional district. Municipalities are, the province collects the taxes. And so those requirements of the parcel tax bylaw are.
So very much a procedural aspect, not necessarily.
Procedural.
Yeah, director saying we don't want this service anymore, which would be a different conversation. My question, were you good with yours?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so my question, and Tom, I'm sorry if you mentioned this, where I'm also watching emails for other issues. What I'd like to know is this pause for me. I do know when the year I was elected was the year this went on the ballot. So I was quite removed from it. I really didn't take an advocacy role. It's the residents' call. I'm not promoting it. But I do recall there being conversations around the 10-year timeline was also to be able to check back in. So I think there was a bit of a miss on our end to flag that at an appropriate time that we wouldn't be up against this deadline. So essentially, if we don't move forward, this service doesn't tax in 2025. So I have two questions for you. Number one, we know a referendum would be $12,000 to $15,000 with all the areas involved at this point, so that doesn't seem very reasonable, possibly more. But the ability to engage the public on that check back in, which I believe was a part of the initial communications around it. What kind of timeline would that require? And my second question is, if we miss the deadline to be able to tax in 2025, that does not prevent us from doing that work in 2025 and then reinstigating it in 2026, or does it?
Respectfully through the chair, to allow the expiry without any amendment would halt taxation on the service. The service would continue to exist, but it would not be funded in any way.
Yes.
So those projects that were, being funded by this would cease. At that point, at the direction of the board, you could commit to a public engagement process. I concur that a referendum would not be called for. Would be extremely expensive, and I don't think it would allow you to accomplish anything that you couldn't already accomplish. It wouldn't grant you any additional authorities.
Okay. So my question on the timeline was that if we miss the deadline, we're not able to tax in 2025, is there a different process to then tax in 2026? Should we then decide to continue with the service? I understand we couldn't in 2025, but does that shut the service down? My understanding is it just be dormant.
Respectfully to the chair, I agree. The service would be dormant the service would be unfunded.
Yes.
Is the way to look at it. And then it would require some subsequent amendment, whether the removal of the time frame piece or an additional time frame or something like that, in order to then say, we are now taxing this much for this time period. Again.
Okay.
Or, respectfully through the chair, the establishment of some form of governance.
Yeah, through the chair, this would be no different than a service that was reaching its maximum, and if the board chose not to increase the limit on the bylaw, you're capped at that for that current year, but if you decided over the course of the year to then raise the limit on the bylaw through whatever process was available, then the next year you could tax more.
Okay.
So it really is just the ability to tax, but it has no bearing on the existence of the service.
So I've got you, Jacqueline, for the second time. That answers that question. Newell for the first time. Thank you. An engagement timeline. If we did, I do feel like, given that when the service was introduced, there was an indication we would revisit how the residents felt about it. So I feel like that's appropriate to do. What is an appropriate timeline to be able to do that?
Respectfully through the chair, this is really Dan Elliott's bailiwick. He's communications and he's very good at these sorts of processes. But given my experience as chief elections officer, running assent votes, AAPs, and those processes, I would say 3 months to get. So it's not.
Through the chair, I think I heard Dan shrug or shudder from here. I would say closer to 6 to 8 to get a good bearing, especially with the number of areas that are in there now. I think that it's also because of the fact that you've got area F in it for the first year, area H, I think coming into its second year, there's an inconsistency in terms of what people might see with respect to the service. You've got 3 areas that have had it for 10 years. They're going to have much stronger opinions, maybe perhaps one way or the other, than someone who has been taxed for it once and hasn't even seen a project implemented, because just the way things work. So I think that there's definitely difficulty there. I think that to the chair's question, I think what you should be considering as participants is this a 10-year extension and you're going to look at it at year 8? Or are you doing a 5-year extension and perhaps looking at it year 3 or even shorter, right? Is it something where you say, geez, we should have looked at this 2 years ago, so now let's make a shorter time frame so that we can start that review process now as opposed to adding another decade to it?
So I do see Dan turned on this video. Can I go to him? Dan, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Through the chair, yeah, I would agree with CAO Horn in the sense of the timing. 6 to 8 months would be much more realistic in terms of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay, Tom, anything, did you want to say more to that?
Yeah, respectfully through the chair,
Cunningham?
the board should, as or may recall, Kootenay Conservation Fund has already done considerable polling in a lot of these areas. And quite recent, I might add, to gauge support for these services. Not in all of these areas, but I know in H, G, K, and a number of them, which was the initiative to bring these services into the fold. When you're evaluating potential for success or support of the service, it may serve the board to review that information prior to an engagement process. There's no need to sort of reinvent that wheel, I suspect.
Okay, so we do have a speakers list. I also have Sangeeta. I've got you on the list. My thoughts are that we would do second reading, but we would also direct that the members get together and discuss this as a committee, which is not formed yet, and we can talk deeper there. So on my list, just checking, I've got Newell, Cunningham, Jackman for the second time, Papa for the second time. And Sangeeta, you wanted to respond now, so go ahead, and then we'll go to Newell.
Just to mention that I went through the minutes from the last two meetings with the participants on the service, and it was raised by KCP that the 10-year clause was coming up for renewal. So it just hasn't been actioned. And I think at the time, the decision wasn't firm as to what to do with that. And that's why Tom brought this forward now. Thanks.
Okay. Well, we're a little late to the game on the timeline and deadline, but here we are. So Newell, go ahead.
All right. First, I'd like to clarify that there is an exit procedure from services for an area. Is that true?
Through the chair, some bylaws we have specifically speak to that. And then there's some bylaws where they don't, so it really defaults to options under the Local Government Act, which is usually how the service was established or how that member joined the service.
Right. So my point raising that is that there is a tremendous urgency in regard to things that want to get out. I do think in the two connected, my next points, that the fund does poll. Their polling was exactly right in area H to percentage wise, right to their vote, right on, which then allowed area F to assume that their polling was so accurate that it was accurate in area F as well, which was very much in favor of the service and the property taxing of that for that service. So I'm actually caught a bit by surprise that there's any resistance to going forward with this. I read this and I had a rubber stamp it, but of course we haven't started paying yet. So I'm just kind of curious about the conversation that's going on. I would recommend that we do over the next over next year, some kind of feedback to people, let them know what's been happened over the last 10 years and see what kind of feedback we get. But so far, the projects have been overwhelmingly approved, and Area H and Area F joined because it was so successful. So anyway, that's my comments.
Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. It occurs though, this is going to be a confusing process with everybody having different 10-year renewal dates. Might there be a possibility to say, can we harmonize them and have a 10-year renewal every year, a year that ended 0 or some such thing that's, in other words, because the people that were over the date, or we're getting closer, will be over by the time this is done. This will give us a perfectly good reason, the idea that we're going to harmonize the renewal dates to look at the thing and do it as a single project. Because I thought of looking at how many participants are there. Rather than doing that, it would be, it seems to be way easier.
Folks, we have to take a quick recess, so just pause for a minute. Thanks. Sorry, Okay, folks, we're back in session. Sorry, just want to let Kendall know, no, we do not have, this is not a delegation time, so we will not take engagement from outside entities at this time. Sangeeta can speak on your behalf if needed. Stuart, to answer Cunningham's question, go ahead.
So through the chair, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, but the different participants don't have different timelines. Everybody joined that one establishment bylaw through an amendment. So area F and area H, even though they just joined in recent years, they're still on that 10-year timeline and would not be able to tax in 2025. So to your point about harmonizing the deadlines or the timelines, this would, they already are, and this would continue to do so.
Thank you, I needed that information.
And I think that the important note on this is there's two different things occurring. One is staff recognize that regional districts do not have the same rules as municipalities. So we don't need a deadline on this. We can still choose to have a deadline on this. We chose to have a deadline on this, whether staff was aware when they initiated this bylaw or not. So there's kind of two questions in front of the participants, which is, do we continue having a deadline? And does that deadline cease at this time? And so next on the list was Jackman, then Popoff. And I really want to recommend that we gather as a participants group to deep dive into what we want to do. Jackman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So whether we knew or not, we had to have a 10-year limit. Part of it was driven by East Kootenay because they had a 10-year limit on theirs. We just kind of copied what East Kootenay did. But we did promise to the public, even though it wasn't us, it was our delegated spokespersons, that they would get to review and see what was what after 10 years. I really truly don't want us to miss that. Now, if we do second reading saying we could wipe the deadline out, maybe they get people's attention. If we give Dan some time and Tom some time to think about messaging, that would be good. Maybe we'll come back in August with something saying we're going to extend by 2 years. Something that doesn't shock the constituency saying, oh, you lied to us. But gives us lots of time that the ongoing multi-year program funding projects aren't going to say, oh my goodness, what am I going to do in 2025, 2026? So I don't want to eliminate it because I think it's a really bad thing. That's, I'm sure, why a percentage of people voted, yeah, we're good because we'll get to see this again. Maybe 2 years, doesn't have to be done today, second reading today, get this cleaned up by August, give us a couple of years.
Thank you. So I do have Papa for the second time, Graham for the second time. Can we recommend that we do the second reading and further that we gather as the participants and we include KCP in that conversation who is wanting to speak, but I'm not allowing them at this time because they're an external entity. And they can bring forward any data we currently have and then look at where we go from here. So Popoff and then Graham, and then we should move along.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That is exactly what my initial intent was, rather than having debate here, is to recommend that we move the second reading and bring it back for the August meeting. That will give directors enough time to canvass their residents and get their feedback. And if we move it back to the August meeting, then we can make the decision whether we want to defer it further or eliminate it further. But that 30-day pause will give us an opportunity to talk to our constituents or get feedback from our constituents.
I'll just say that bringing this back in August does not give us enough time to plan a meeting between participants, have KCP present and staff available. We don't have 30 days between now and the August board meeting, and we also have staff going on vacation. So I would suggest September.
If I can respond to that,
yes.
I did talk to Tom Dew, and his recommendation is to bring it back for the August meeting to meet the deadline of October.
We can't do that. I'm sorry. There's no way all the participants are available between now and then. So I'm
okay. September.
Tom, go ahead.
Respectfully to the chair, it's, we need to get this to the provincial government by October. If staff can get a bylaw in front of the board no later than the October board meeting with the board's preferences in it, then at that point it can be successful. The only reason I really strongly recommended September was to give the board more space in the event that something should come back and there should be further debate on the matter. But I guess in order to tax successfully for the service in 2025, we will need a decision from the board by October.
By October. We need the space for the participants to get together with KCP and our staff, and doing that before August is just not possible. So just being realistic, but move your motion.
Yeah, I'd like to move, well, Director Graham has an opportunity to say something before I move on. My motion would be first and second reading and bring it back to the September meeting.
And further, I'm going to add an amendment to it, and you can speak to it because it's only second reading. And further, that the participants that staff organize a meeting with participants and the KCP before it comes back to us, so we can make recommendations on what we want to do as a group that's not at this table.
Sounds good.
Okay,
I would second that if that's all appropriate as
Yes.
the motion.
and sorry, Christine, did you get all that? Awesome. Okay, Graham.
I'm good now.
Okay. Thank you, Sangeeta. I see your note. We're doing what we can. I don't want to rush this simply because we missed catching this on time. We have to do this correct. So, further discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Stuart. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And sorry, folks, I'm jumping back and forth to my email because we have just signed an evacuation order. So sorry if thank you. All right. Bylaw 2964, 2965, OCP and zoning bylaw for area J.
Yeah, hi, can I speak to it first?
You sure can.
I don't want the rest of the planning department to feel that, or anyone to think that Janet's the only one that deserves kudos. I think our first discussion was around a year ago on this project. And Zach was super helpful, and then the file moved to Stephanie, who also did an absolutely excellent job right up to getting it on the agenda for today, which was critical for the project to move forward because of funding deadlines. So it's with great pleasure to move third reading on the recommendation as presented.
Second. Thank you, Graham. Discussion. Just want to acknowledge I didn't catch your name.
Rebecca.
I did catch your name. I forgot it. Sorry. Rebecca is a part of this, and thank you for all of your work. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And
I move adoption of the second recommendation as presented.
Thank you, second. Thank you, Director Main. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And on the third reading on the third recommendation as presented.
Thank you. This is your zoning amendment. Second. Thank you, McFadden. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. An adoption.
And I move adoption of the fourth recommendation as presented.
Thank you. Second. Thank you, Jackman. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Yay.
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 Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, bylaw 2966, public notice bylaw. Papa. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I've read that bylaw. And again, I still have a problem of having first, second, and third reading and adoption at the same meeting without providing the opportunity for directors to make comments on that policy or the bylaw that we're doing. And just a few more words about that is, I understand the efficiency and the cost saving by the report that was put forward, but we do have a couple of newspapers that could be going broke and under if we don't advertise in them. One of them is Valley Voice, and the other one is Pennywise. They do advertising, so my take is do first and second reading, and then come back with a recommendation to the board whether we proceed with adoption, what's there, and possibly maybe a hybrid approach where we advertise in the two papers that do weekly. The reason I singled out those two papers because they go in every mailbox in the area, where the other ones you have to pick them up around town or wherever they are. And the municipalities are slightly different. They have access to their newspapers within their municipalities. The larger ones is what I'm talking about. So I'll open up for debate, but I'd like to move first and second
Okay, you can move.
at a later date.
Okay, so we'll go through the speakers list. I do have Maine, McFadden. Oh, McLaren, Cohen, then McFadden. Okay, Dan, you turned on your video. I see this is your report. Do you want to say anything at this time or go through speakers list? Go ahead.
Through the chair, not at this point in time, I guess well, actually, I'll say one thing, just to give everybody a little bit understanding, better clarification in terms of our advertising budget. Just an example, this year so far, the RDCK has spent just under $100,000 in advertising in 2024. And of that amount, just over 15,000 has been spent on public notices. So in terms of our annual advertising budget, approximately 15 to 20% would be spent on public notices on a yearly basis. So just to help let people understand that we will be still advertising with our local newspapers who we have outstanding relationships with throughout our community. But this is just strictly for the public notices at this point in time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was important to clarify that because I myself had that question. This is only related to the public notices required in the LGA. It's not related to general advertising for engagement and whatnot. So we have Maine, McLaren Co, McFadden, and Hewitt. Director Maine.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's really important to note that not everybody has access to the internet. Not everybody has a computer or even a cell phone, and not everybody has access to the regional district office bulletin board. So it is the way that the new bylaw is written is incredibly restrictive and tone deaf to what our constituency actually is. So I think it's really important that we continue and have it noted formally that we continue using print advertising because that captures so much more of our constituencies than just an online presence does. And this is in addition to the consideration of supporting local businesses. But the main thing is that when we communicate with people, we need to go to where they are. And we need to go to where they are in very robust fashion. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, if you want to respond at any point, just unmute and indicate so. I'll watch your video as well. McLaren Co.
Thank you, Chair. Director May took most of my talking points there. I think we need to meet people where they're at. I think it's an equity of access piece for me. Notwithstanding the support for local business. As noted in the report, it says in our strategic plan, the first item under organizational excellence is robust communication in a range of mediums. Online and a notice board is not, to me, a robust range of mediums. I appreciate the efficiency, like Director Popoff said, for both taxpayers and the workload of staff, but sometimes government work is supposed to be inefficient because it's supposed to reach a lot of people. And I think that's the purpose of communicating things like this and having this active communication, because online is a passive thing. You have to go out and find it. And if you look at certain communities within the regional district, particularly up the Slocan Valley and in the cusp and Area K, the average age is significantly higher than a lot of places. And I'm not saying that old people can't use the internet, but there are preferences for how to receive and consume information. And I think given our experience over the past couple of years with climate action plan and other items that we've engaged or not engaged with the public on, despite living in the age of communication, we have to, there's so much noise out there that we have to be very specific about how we strategize our communication. So with respect to the work the staff has done, they do a great job, but I think, to agree with the directors that have already spoken, I think that we have to maintain the print medium despite the cost and efficiency.
Sure.
So through the chair, just a comment that if that is the consensus of the directors, then I would not recommend moving first or second reading because the bylaw would really not have any value. There's no amendments to make to the bylaw that would make any changes. The real purpose of the bylaw is to say that under the LGA, we have the ability to change the way that we do public notices, specifically removing that print advertising as an option. And if you're not willing to do that or not wanting to do that, then I would not move anything with respect to this bylaw, because all it's going to do is replace the direction under the Local Government Act, which we already have. If that makes sense.
I'll pause for a second time. Okay, so I'm going to keep going through the list. I've got McFadden, myself, David Off, Weatherhead. If we get to a point where we're all saying the same thing, I think we just move along. So McFadden, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you to the previous directors. You said things I was not thinking of, to be honest.
you're looking at efficiencies and cost savings there for public notice things. And so I did have a couple questions on, the actual public, or what you're proposing. And my concern was that all three mediums that you can see in there are all RDCK centric, and that would be an issue for me, is that there isn't anything you're using that isn't, where someone would have to be attached to the RDCK website, Facebook page, or something. That would be my one concern. My second concern is, are you looking at paid advertisement through our RDCK page, like where they're, or are you looking at just posting it on there and it being seen? And then I have a third question, if possible. That'd be a question probably for
Dan.
Are you looking at paid advertisement through like the RDCK page, or are you looking at just it being passively placed on there?
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, through the chair. Just at this point in time, was looking at having it being placed on there. And in terms of being RDCK centric, that is true. But at the same point in time, we are trying to establish that the RDCK website and our Facebook page are the authority for RDCK information. Our biggest challenge at times is that information is coming from different sources and people have questions about it and not sure whether it's true or not at times. So ensuring that the information is coming across as directly from the RDCK, that is why we want to have it right on our website and our Facebook page, so people understand that it is right from us and not from another source.
And just before your supplemental, I just want to add to that. I think we're aware, but just in case, public notices under the LGA are very prescriptive. So again, that's what this focus is that we have had a few printed where they're not the way it was, we had to redo it. So it's that specificity of thank you, from the LGA, that is really the critical point about where it is and how it's read, and that we've met those criteria. So please continue.
Yeah, so in my understanding, the public notices would be a select area that they would need to be posted in, which is a pretty, not the whole RDCK, but a select number of residences. Have we looked at the option of actual mail out notices for select areas, like, and factored that in? Is that cost even close to what if we're noticing that our local media, which I get, great businesses, whatever, but if they're screwing up on their job and not printing them accurately, we need to make sure we're meeting our requirements. So we looked at the other side of it of what a mail out would be for specific areas and what that cost is compared to what we're paying for newspaper ads.
And Dan, 1 second, Stuart's gonna respond and then I'll go to you.
Dan, you can fill in where I might be missing on this, but through the chair, I think the biggest problem with mailouts, yes, they are costly. The biggest problem with mailouts is that we've had significant issues with Canada Post, and either not everybody getting it that we intended to get it, or someone getting the information and it doesn't apply to them, and then they get really confused, right? Someone outside of a fire service area getting a mail out on a referendum for a fire truck, that just causes more confusion, more administrative time, and we really, really struggle with it based on the cost that there is to do that. Because if you want to get very specific and make sure that accuracy is there, it costs a fortune. If you want to do a general mail out and try to keep it to boundaries that Canada Post provides, the inaccuracies outweigh the benefit of it.
I'll just see if Dan has anything to add to that.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, totally obviously accurate in terms of what CAO Horn has just said with regards to the mailers. And we understand that, you know, our residents, everybody loves mailers in the sense that it comes right to their door and it is right there for them. But in terms of the cost, it's just not realistic in terms of the pricing that goes with it. It's quite expensive in terms of dealing with that. And we have done them through some of our sent votes. Curbside collection had done one previously, upwards of $10,000 that they're paying in terms of for mailouts. I will also mention one other thing in terms of this potential bylaw is that we could do a scenario where we are doing less print advertising currently with our current bylaw. The scenario is that we have to advertise for 2 straight weeks in a publication, but we could change that or have an amendment, obviously not an amendment, but if we create a new bylaw that we have it just as 1 week running in a print newspaper as an option as well.
McFadden, does that answer your questions? Yeah, thank you. Okay. I was next, but I'm gonna go last if necessary. David Off, Weatherhead, pop off for a second. Hewitt, your question was answered. You're good. Okay, so David Off, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad that we got to the mailer information. If I want my constituents to know something, they've told me for 15 years, do a mailer. And we just did, we did a mailer. I paid for it through Area I grants. It wasn't an expense to the RDCK. And we checked, and this was the climate action plan pieces. 60% of the people that attended our meetings came there because of the mailer, and the website was almost zero. So our website. So the bottom line is that, and newspapers and other iterations were other media sources were percentages. So to me, if something's important enough, and we need our constituents to know about it, and we want to access everyone, my constituents make it very clear to me, please do a mailer. And if I have to pay for that, I do. And I know a couple other directors that do the same thing. So, and that is not coming out of our general revenues and stuff like that. So, I guess that's the question, is that if we have newspapers that are put in everybody's mailbox, that is probably better than a newspaper that isn't put in everyone's mailbox. And the best of all is our cards that we send out with this specific information. So I just wanted to note that. Thank you.
Thank you. So directors, I'm just highlighting that we're all kind of indicating we want to maintain that newspaper print. So as we continue to get more speakers, if you agree, let's just move on. If you disagree, let's hear that. So I put myself last. I don't think I'll need to speak. I've got Weatherhead Cunningham pop off for a second time. Weatherhead, go ahead.
I do agree. I just had a question on the public notices. Are they quite explicit in directing people to the RDCK website?
Go ahead, Dan.
Through the chair, yes, they are. Every notice is directing people back to the website for more information about the specific notice.
Supplemental, go ahead.
So is there a way to downsize on the size of it and direct readers to go to the website for further information? Or does that not suffice? Just thinking of size.
Through the chair, unfortunately, it cannot be changed in size for the official public notice. We have to do the legally obligated information that becomes in every public notice information, and majority of those are significant size in the newspaper. That every basically go from a third of a page to a full page ad.
And so I just want to note that McCusk was mentioned here as a a notice board in their office, and just so that regional district knows, very few people go there. It is not in a visible place. It's so, and of course Area K would not.
Thank you. Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. But through the idea of a mailer, we're talking about mailers to each individual address, which is very expensive. Or if we're talking about the mass mailer thing, which is way, way cheaper, people can refuse to get it just the same way as they do refuse to get the local paper or any advertising flyers. And those who have a thing that says no flyers in their mailbox just don't get anything other than big letters that are directly addressed to them. And I was curious as to when we were talking about mailers, which kind of system are we talking about? The mass flyer thing that people can refuse? Because I know in Weimar, for example, over probably 3/4 of people don't get flyers in their mail. They don't get advertising in their mail because they've sent none of it. We want to save paper, information.
So with this one, because public notices would be area specific, they would not be a mass flyer. It would be an area specific, which drastically increases the cost, especially in rural areas when you don't have those defined boundaries as per municipality. It takes a lot more work to get Canada Post to be specific to certain addresses. So that's where you get the complexity of the cost and ensuring the right people are getting it. When it's not a public notice and it's general advertising, you can make the size you want, you can say what you want. That I think the real sticking point with this is public notices have very specific criteria, very detailed, and need to be targeted to the actual area it's affecting.
So they have to be individually addressed then.
Essentially, yes.
Thank you.
Dan, anything else on that?
No, not this time.
Okay. So I'm not gonna say that I vote McFadden for a second time.
Sorry, I'm just looking through all of this. Is there a way to hit a middle ground where you, because I think currently reading the bylaw, tell me if I'm wrong, you have to have 2 different print newspapers that run for 2 weeks consecutively. So I'm wondering, is there a way to open it up to having where there's a singular one and you're using, so now you're still hitting both, but you're not constricted and we still save ourselves some money and you have a little bit more as staff to just defer to whichever publication you're feeling hits the mark best for. Do you know what I'm saying? Just because we have limited print. So I'm just wondering if there's a middle ground here.
Dan, go ahead.
Through the chair, it does not have to be in 2 separate publications. We are able to do it in just one publication. So if it was specific to, for example, something in area H, we could just specifically advertise within the Valley Voice.
Thank you. So I think it's good to note that if we want to amend the bylaw as is, we should still do second reading and then we can provide further input into what we're thinking. I think that that's a good point to give flexibility to that. So Maine, do you need to add to this at this point or can I go to pop off for?
Go ahead.
I suggest second reading and then if we want to amend to make more flexibility there, we can do that or we can take no further action if there's no changes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That was my initial intent, not to have a debate at this meeting on this one, is move second reading. And then they'll have, the directors will have opportunity to provide input to Dan regarding this. And he can come back with possibly what was suggested here as a hybrid model.
And I believe this should come back in August. I don't think we need a lot of time on this one.
Okay.
Dan, does that work for you?
Through the chair, it does, yes.
Okay, so moved second reading.
Yes.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Maine. So if you have further input on this, please send it to Dan. Is he the primary person? Anyone else you want copied on that? Mike Morrison. Okay, and do that I do that by August 8th is in my head agenda deadline, I think. Do the first week of August at the latest.
Yeah, just possibly maybe September to give an opportunity because it's the middle of summer.
Well, I'm hearing general agreement. We're just looking at how many newspapers are we doing this in. So I don't think we need to. We generally support, we want to keep it in print. Good to know. Do we want to amend how much and what is the provision? So I think 1st of August is good. Okay. No, sounds like Dan's good with that. Yep, nodding. Okay, further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So second reading. Back in August. Area F. You ready?
Oh, yeah, that's yes. Move the new financial contribution service establishment bylaw for second and third time by content.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Area H.
I will move that recommendation for second, third, and
Thank you.
establishment.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Maine. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Central Waste Management refuse disposal loan authorization.
I'd like to move the recommendation that you read at first, second, and third time by content.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you, Maine. This is all vote weighted. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I did verify this was the resource recovery plan identified this. West Management, pop off, go ahead.
Yeah, I move that recommendation that's in there.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So item 8.10, we'll bring this back in August. So that's just letting you know. 9.1.1, it looks like we had some municipalities join in that, so the cost did increase, and that's the motion here to amend. Would anyone like to move that or ask a question? Maine?
So
Do we have a second? Thank you, Popoff. Discussion? Yes, Lockwood.
Thank you. I don't know who would this question go towards, but, we had hired, had a contract with Selkirk College and had an extra 100 hours because the lady was so efficient at doing our transit study that she compiled a whole bunch of housing information for us. And that information is being forwarded. Would it affect how much more work that needs, because what needs to happen is what is the little pieces missing out of it?
So Dana just came on. Dana, go ahead.
Through the chair, that information that Salmo's Mayor Lockwood has provided and the interim CAO has been forwarded on to Macola. I don't think it would affect the cost though, because I think there's still the motions that have to go through and the data to be provided to complete the housing needs assessment.
Thank you. Okay. Further discussion? Vandenberg, go ahead.
Hi, thank you through the chair. Just want to clarify, this is a benefit for everyone, this report? Or is this, because we did spend some time talking specifically around the Nelson area. So I just want some clarity as to this cost and the benefactors.
All rural areas plus we've added a few municipalities after being able, because this was in front of us last month and a few municipalities noted they wanted to join. So that's the amendment at this time, is adding them in. So all rural areas. Dana, go ahead, sorry.
Yes, so originally at last month's meeting, it was all rural areas, Nakusp, Slocan, and Silverton. And since that time, we've added Caslow and Salmo, which is the reason for the cost increase.
Okay, Director Hewitt, and then I'll go to McLaren Co.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for agreeing to entertain adding the extra communities onto the study. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Director Hewitt. Thanks goes to Dana. McLaren Co. Good, good. Okay, we're good. Further discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Greenhouse gas emission pathway study. We have a report. I have Sherry online. I saw her come on. If we have questions. Oh, hi, Sherry. And we have a motion. What would the directors like to do? Anyone want to move a motion or ask a question? Jackman, thank you. Popoff second. Discussion? Jackman?
Discussion. It's interesting that the level of optimism is high, and that's good. And that's what you need if you're going to see big steps and massive change. But there is a presumption here that this will enable us to meet our 50% 2030 and 100% 2050 targets. But at what cost? So that's all I want to say is that this will enable us to analyze the cost of, as local government trying to reach those targets versus the provincial and federal government doing something, either funding or actions on their own. So I mean, it's just implicit in here that we're now going to be able to do this. And all we're going to be able to do is put some big numbers in front of the future board. And I want the public to see it as that. Not that we're just going to do what's presumed is achievable today. We're just going to put some big numbers in front of us and then arm wrestle over what order of government has to do something.
Yeah. It'll be combined with your asset management considerations. Lockwood.
Thank you. If this goes through, is this the pathway that we will find out that Fortis is not putting in any more gas lines to new building places, and that our bylaw, building bylaw, will give us a report on how that's going to affect new building areas? Anybody? I don't know. I just got told that 2 days ago that somebody that wanted to build a 44 complex place in Salmo and they cannot have gas.
Go ahead, Sherry.
Thank you, through the chair. I just wanted to let you know, so this study is actually for the RDCK owned buildings. So it's not affecting the community buildings at all. If you like, I could pass that message on to the building department that there was a question regarding the natural gas hookups. It is nothing that I've heard of from FortisBC.
Yes, and that would be great. If you haven't heard it from Fortis BC and this is Fortis, that would be really good. Because it came from a Fortis person.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I had two comments on this one. The first one is, I do want to reference that RNG, renewable natural gas, can, especially in our area, be derived from wood. And we know from our wood waste study that generally speaking, to be able to generate energy from that in this region, we would actually have to be harvesting or acquiring volume from other areas. It's not just a waste wood use. So I am not in favor of assuming that RNG through wood waste or through wood fiber is actually a renewable energy simply because it was a tree at the beginning. It is not a renewable energy. So that is one thing I'm curious, Sherry, if this is something that is being discussed in the energy efficiency world. There was a lot of interest in it, but it was always, I know from us at the RDCK, when we looked at that wood waste study, it was predominantly looking at wood waste, not harvesting for energy. I think that that's a very different approach, and I would not in any way support that. So just, that's my first question. And then I'll just throw out my second one. Is Fortis in any way, as a funder and a provider, I've always had a bit of an issue with that. I know that they're trying to do their best to be energy efficient, but are they guiding the results in any way, or do they get involved in those results? So those are my two questions.
Okay, thank you for those, Chair Watson. For your first question around the RNG and the wood waste is definitely one source of RNG, but just to be cognizant that the RNG is through a huge network which extends to Alberta and to the remainder of BC. There are different classifications of where RNG will come from. Some of it could be actually from landfill gas emissions in different areas. And it is all coded to different colors of how renewable, I guess, or green the energy source comes from. Perhaps that's something that I can add in to the next pathway or the next study report on this, just to let you know more information about RNG. And
thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, don't put a lot of, I just want to be cautious that if we're getting into RNG or accessing RNG that is from a wood fiber aspect, that is not a waste aspect, it's actual harvesting, that's a line. I think we know that they're harvesting heavily in the north, and that's going to energy, and it's really, I don't think that's environmentally friendly whatsoever. So don't put a lot of effort into it, but I would say that if that's the road that Fortis is taking, I would have concerns with it.
Yeah.
And how is Fortis guiding the results?
Okay, I hear you. And on that point, with the wood waste, I'm not sure if everyone is aware that there has been a RNG facility proposed for Fruitvale. They apparently have gotten a development permit through the RDKB. But as I understand, there are difficulties with what you're speaking about, finding appropriate sources for the wood waste. So that one is kind of a question there. For your second question regarding the direction from FortisBC, a lot of this funding comes, or the funding is defined by their application to the BC Utilities Commission. So FortisBC has to demonstrate that they are looking at ways to reduce emissions within BC as part of the plan in order to deliver their energy. So that is where this funding comes from. they do not direct the study other than the terms of reference that we will enter into, saying that we will consider RNG as part of a potential pathway. We were going to do that anyway, and that's why I didn't think it was an unreasonable request, and actually this would help us develop some other initiatives in order to further our interests in energy efficiency and emissions reduction. So to your question, they will review, they might comment, but they don't have a direct say in directing or pushing that report one way or the other.
Thank you, Sherry. I have Sangeeta. I'm sorry, I missed you before. Go ahead.
Through the chair, I was just commenting, I wanted to actually ask for clarification from Director Lockwood on her comment about building inspection service addressing the gas issue in the municipality.
You guys,
Can she yeah, maybe after
she'll
this.
reach out to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Director Lochtenberg.
I just want to echo my concern about FortisBC and the renewable natural gas. Just as a caution, Fortis has been promoting the Fruitville Bren Energy project for quite a long time. They even featured it on their website. And it is, I'll say, very questionable project that is in a very loose state of development. So just be aware of that.
Thank you. Our wood waste study identified quite a few years ago the notion that the volumes in this area from a waste wood would never be sufficient enough. So that's where my comments are coming from. Okay, I see no further discussion. Oh, Vandenberg, go ahead.
I've been listening very closely to this, and I've been taking a lot of time to understand this, and going back to the report given to us in February of 2023, I get a sense that we should have reached some conclusions, and what we're being asked for today is to add on to. And I'm not clear as to where we're going to end up and how long this is going to continue. Regardless of free money, or there is no such thing as free money or grant money. It's all the same money. I'm a little bit concerned that we're continuing on something when I read the report back in February 23, we're supposed to be able to discuss something, but we haven't. We're not there. We're being asked to add on or continue the pilot or continue the work, and so I'm a little bit hesitant in approving this until, yes, there is talk of putting together a workshop for us to review, but I think we need to be doing that now before we start approving any more money on this, so we know where we're going and is it reasonable that the goal we're trying to achieve is achievable. We've got a lot of dynamics that are happening now provincially and federally, and there could be some major policy changes, and so I'm not comfortable with approving anything going forward until we understand what we've done. And from what we've done, we're comfortable with an appropriate direction that has measurables that we can attach to it. Because right now we don't have any measurables. It's just an exploration. And it's a continued exploration. And so that doesn't sit well with me. So I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not going to be supporting it right now until we have a chance to really sit down and workshop this out.
Sherry, do you want to provide any feedback?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for your comment. So just to say that the study does have a little bit of a tricky timeline because we're trying to integrate it with the asset management plan or the asset management strategy and to seek how we can best do this study. so that it can integrate smoothly and it does become more relevant to our plans moving forward with asset renewal, etc. We do have a definite end for this study, which is why I'm coming to the board at this point. The study is slated to end in October 2024. We designed it to be done at that time so that it could inform next year's budget if there are any measures that we can do starting in 2025. So we thought it was important to have that end date in order to go ahead with implementation if need be. I will just assert that to be included in the study and to be able to do these extra design items, such as looking at optimizing ventilation in the complexes so that then we can possibly reduce the HVAC load, for instance, or looking at bolstering the automated building control system design. So these are things that we're going to be able to do with these extra funds. I would say that it would be good if the board was able to make a decision now so that we could include these in the studies. I'm not sure when the next opportunity would come in order to do these initiatives and get funding through FortisBC.
Thank you. I just want to see if I'm understanding that this level of funding is to drill down on a more detailed approach to what would be required so that when it comes to a budgeting perspective, we're not working with like a D class level of assessment. We're working with more of like a B class assessment, like more detailed. Is that really the difference?
The difference is that right now there are measures that are possibly in the air, but they're not definite, like they're not defined. So out of this study, we will have defined recommendations on how to go forward with energy modeling of a lot of our facilities. So it will be like a more concrete plan of how we can go forward, depending on what pathway we decide to go forward with. And there will be 3 options that the staff and then the board will be able to decide upon. But we will have these definite measures that then with the asset management strategy, and we are considering the asset renewal. So it's not going to be replacing an HVAC system next year when it's not slated to be replaced for 10 years sort of thing. That will not happen unless we have gross inefficiencies in that particular HVAC system. But yes, we will have you'll be able to see the return on investment of specific measures. And from there, we will pull it together and be able to more define the path forward, if that makes sense, for each facility.
Thank you. I just want to repeat, in 2023, there was 4 pillars that were 4 stages. The request was to proceed with 1 and 2 and have support with 1 and 2 and deliver stage 3. Stage 3 being studying long-term retrofit options, and the remaining stage implementing capital upgrades. That's part of it back in 2023. I'm not quite clear as to what this is proposing to do. But you use keywords like optimizing, replacing, redesigning. Last board meeting, we all took a pause and stood back, and the cost of our recreation centers are driving out of control. And to me, we've got to be very careful that this is the appropriate path forward, that this will pay back and add value. I am not convinced right now, and we've had a period of time since 2023 where we should be at this point in time and be a little bit more satisfied as to where this is going to go and what the payback is. Now we're being asked to invest a lot more money into what I see as should be implementing capital upgrades, because studying long-term retrofit options are supposed to have been a part of where we're at today. So I'm reluctant until we take a moment and discuss this in a workshop. I'm reluctant to approve anything because this is very fuzzy. It doesn't have a lot of measurable metrics to it. And I'm reluctant to suggest to my taxpayers to go ahead and trust me.
Anyone else on the speakers list? No. Okay, Graham, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'm confused about the financial ask here. Like, the way that this report is written, the project was 250, it included 200 in a grant, and 50 came from the regional district. And now we're being asked for another 65, like from A108, like.
We're applying for the funding to Fortis. It's not taxation.
It's not taxation, so we're applying to
We're
Fortis for
applying.
another, but what about our 20% that we were supposed to agree to with the grant?
That was on the original grant. This one does not require that. Sherry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to reinforce what you're saying, Director or Chair Watson, in that the 50,000 will come from the services as originally planned, and this would just be a full up to $65,000 input from Fortis BC to support the study.
What's mental, is that a guaranteed input, or is it something we have to apply for and wait?
This motion is to apply for the funding. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, and we have public time in a minute, so.
And I'll make it very quick. So where I was going with this is because this says facilities with natural gas and electricity usage. What a Fortis person said to a new developer is that they could not get a new Fortis gas line put in to their new home, and anybody with gas will be phased out going down the road. So if your gas stove stops working, that they will stop producing those at some point in time. He did not give a timeline, but that is where they're headed. So I'm not sure if that's where some of this is coming from, because we don't have a clear direction, but that's what I've heard in 4 days ago. So I'm concerned that we're not getting a whole picture, and Fortis is maybe throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to figure out if local governments will do some work for them, or BC Hydro, in the case that they'll probably have to do this. And this helps us figure out these different things.
So we're at public time. You're talking about the source of energy. We're talking about evaluating assets to assess what's inefficient, not the source of energy. So we need to pause this because we're at public time. So there is a motion on the floor, correct? Well, we have 2 more speakers and I can't continue speaking. We need to go to public time. So either call the question or refer it to after lunch.
Call the question.
Call the question. All those in favor?
You have to have a vote on that.
That's right. We're voting on the question.
Voting on whether to call the question, correct?
Yes.
That's right.
Suspend debate.
So we're suspending debate. All those in favor of calling the question, 2/3. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3. Sorry, online, was anybody opposed to calling the question? Okay, so 3 out of 19. We have 1 director not here. No, we have 5 here. Okay, so that passes. All those in favor? Opposed? Vandenberg, Lockwood, recorded?
Yes, please.
Okay, you got that, Christine? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're at public time. We don't have any members of the public in the room anymore. So those online that would like to ask a question, if you can put your hand up and then I'll go in order. Friendly reminder for those who haven't been here before, you have a maximum of 2 minutes and if you can focus on a question. So would anybody like to ask a question? And if you're having a hard time unmuting, you can put it in chat. I just realized that there are a few that have had an issue, so I will allow that. Just give it a second. I'm not seeing anybody in chat or with hands. Okay. So we have another 12 minutes before lunch. Let's keep going. I am curious, 9.1.3 is the terms of reference for the conservation fund, and I have quite a few questions. I did get a few submitted. I'm wondering if, because we're going to gather as a group, if we could refer those to the participant conversation. Would that be appropriate? Jackman, go ahead.
Yeah, prior to moving referral, yeah, what I didn't understand is the difference between the biodiversity targets, which took me a long time to UNIC, whatever, now to priority conservation actions and how that table shifts. I'd love to understand that a little bit better. There's other little things, like there's a link referred to in the terms of reference. So there's a few things I would love to get my head around a little bit. And I don't think it's super time critical.
So I would suggest we refer the terms of reference discussion to the Conservation Service meeting, but then the next motion, I think we could move ahead on because it's a governance one that we have been asking for.
So I would move referral of the first recommendation until after the service participants have an opportunity to meet with the conservation program.
You're referring to discuss it in that meeting. In the participants meeting.
Yes, but it also has to return to board.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Christine, was that clear? Yeah. Oh, good. So moved and seconded discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, carried, and I think we can go ahead with this motion on the committee creation. Thank you. Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, carried. All right, 10 more minutes. Let's do the food policy council.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to type my name in and I couldn't open the screen. I had a question on the last one.
On the conservation service?
Yeah.
Terms of reference or creation of the committee?
Creation of the committee.
Yes, go ahead.
Would that be another committee chair? I guess I'm asking to the chair, to staff, I guess to the CAO. Would that standing committee be then another committee where we'd have to pay stipends and expenses?
Through the chair, that would be determined through the drafting of the bylaw and up to the committee participants.
Not all committees get stipends, so we can choose to not do that. No, it's not necessary, but go ahead.
Yeah, just supplemental into the CAO through the chair. I think all standing committees right now do have stipend and expenses. Am I correct?
No. Emergency executive doesn't get stipends. There's a few others that don't. Crescent Valley Services, shared services, no stipend.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Central Kootenay Food Policy Council, we've had a delegation from Damon Chouinard, I think it was last month, with a request. This is that request. I do want to note that the core funding we've been providing since the inception of the Food Policy Council is not the same as this. It is separate. And that has been in the last 3 years, $15,000. And so that is not the same request as this. This is a specific project request. So just clarifying that, the report did outline it. Paris is online. Do we have questions or are we ready for a motion? McLaren Co.
I'm happy to move the motion and speak to it, but I'll wait if there's discussion.
We can move it and get it on the floor. We have a second. And then Vandenberg, how to go? Do you want to speak to it first, McLaren Co?
Sure, I'll just quickly say that, well, I could go on about the Food Policy Council and all of its benefits, but I'll just say that bolstering food security has been at the top of mind for people in my community, and I'm sure other communities for many years. And I think supporting the economic viability of that sector through this gap analysis and empowering local stakeholders is quite worthy of the $20,000 spend out of LGCAP. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll note that the when I started my food systems work in 2009, no, that's the year my son was born, 2005. The biggest gap for the farmers, we did a North Kootenay Lake food shed assessment, and the biggest gap and most difficult thing to assess was the distribution system. Our distribution is based on global food systems. It's not based on regional. And so you have a lot of ad hoc ways that people are delivering to each other, and formalizing or looking at ways to enhance a regional distribution system is very much the foundation of a robust food system that is viable for farmers. So I did understand where Damon was going with this, and it's long overdue in terms of no one's really taken this on because it's quite a piece. So I am happy to support it for those reasons, and I was grateful to see there was already over $100,000 from the bigger funders. So that was a good indication that there is support for this. Further discussion. Vandenberg.
Yes, thank you. The work is of interest for sure. The amount of investment is not the big issue or an issue for myself. The results of the gap analysis need to be timely, and I don't see where we're going to get the results of that. As far as speaking, if I can, on Crescent and A, B, and C, with our local producers and our local participators in there, there's a concern that the Food Policy Council has not really done enough yet to reach out and include them into their program and project. So I would strongly suggest to Paris, and I will be voicing myself, that participation by A, B, and C in Creston has to take a higher priority. I know that Damon has suggested that he needs to reach out because he hasn't yet, but I cannot impress upon this group and this potential funding to move forward that needs to start occurring, and that locally we're watching it very carefully. Yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay. I can provide to you that so Tanya Wall, previous director, was directly involved in both the food scene as well as the Food Policy Council, and there was some connection there that was changed once also Abra left. So there's been a staffing change. When I spoke to Damon, I did speak to him after that meeting because I wanted to make sure he understood our funding parameters and how that worked. Jackman on the list, please. I identified that I recommend not only does he go to Crescent Valley Services Committee to discuss with the directors directly those concerns, but also what are the avenues, and that was very much on his work plan. And also as our member of that committee, your neighbor, I believe, is taking notes. McLaren Co was your representative for us.
Supplemental then.
Yes.
Because you brought that forward with Tanya Wall. Tanya Wall is giving us a lot of direction as to what's really happening on the ground. And mostly my concern is her concern.
Okay, great. I mean, it's not great there's concern. It just that conversation continued outside of her being at this table. It's good. She's always been in the food scene, so she's a good advocate for making sure the farmers' voices are heard. Paris, I'm sorry, did you unmute and did you want to add to that? No, okay. Jackman, you were next.
Yeah, thank you. So projects tend to evolve sometimes because of where people have connections, whether it's your business, family, or whatever. So this is leaning, into Kamloops direction. I drive to Kamloops all the time. I know exactly how hard it is. Moving stuff there is not super quick and easy. And I drive through the Okanagan frequently, is mostly North Okanagan. And I would have to say they are terraforming farmland to increase productivity. Go through Colstrip, drive through Vernon, look at some of these areas and fields and what they're doing. They're going to produce a lot more food, and they're going to be what sells to Kamloops. And what else is going on in the Okanagan waterwise, I'm not sure. I do know that some of the people in the Crescent Valley in that cluster have targeted Calgary, Lethbridge, Edmonton. I can get from Creston to Calgary a whole lot faster than I can get from Creston to Kamloops, just saying, by a difference of 2 or 3 hours. So there needs to be parallel thought put into, both for this regional district, Kootenay boundary and East Kootenay, about the millions of people who can't grow what we can grow, but will pay the extra dollars for it. All the way up to Edmonton, because David, and one of the producers, that was his marketing direction. Edmonton, they would buy whatever he could get there. Mm-hmm. It's not hard to get there. So that is part of the important thing. If we build connectivity and transportation networks to somewhere where they won't pay our farmers that little bit extra that's required to keep the small scale farm in business, meeting all the expenses, because they take it for granted to get it as cheaper from Vernon or maybe a little cheaper. We will just be building access to the market that doesn't value us as highly. Whereas if you build the connectivity to the market that knows they can't grow what we can grow and they will pay the extra buck, that's what our farmers need. They need an extra $1 per pound for carrots. They need an extra 50 cents for this or that. So I really hope that we will encourage the Food Policy Council to look at that other direction. Millions, what, 1.5 million in Greater Calgary, 1 million plus in Edmonton. Lethbridge is so close to the Crested Valley, it almost hurts. And it's too dry, too cold comparatively to grow anything near what you can do. So we need to be more open-minded.
Absolutely. The bioregional food system approach is a lot of the geoclimatic aspects to where things grow, what's accessible. And one of the things that almost works against this region was that we were designed around an agricultural scene that didn't. We had all these storage stuff and boats and trains, and then we changed all that and put roads in. And so we're working with an inefficient system to the actual geoclimatic opportunities for food growing. And that's, I'll stop there. What I would suggest is that not only does McLaren Co. take notes on what you're suggesting, but I don't think there's anything preventing you speaking directly with Damon over your thoughts and ideas. And also Paris, I believe, can take notes. So there's a couple different avenues, very, very important. I think this is the kind of stuff, especially because we have folks that are really in the food scene that are at this table as well, that providing that input. Damon was really receptive to hearing all the different things, and he's still catching up to, you know, there was a big gap between Abra and Damon where there was somebody who was unable to do a lot of this work. So that gap is kind of part of the catch up. So McLaren Co., you took notes, I hope. Thank you very much. No one else on the speakers list? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 12 o'clock on the dot. See you after lunch. Thanks, everybody.
There's a secret meeting.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, shoot. CEO, is there, that room's occupied. I took that for granted.
I appreciate the heads up.
I took it for granted. I didn't tag you yesterday.
Thanks to those online. See you at 1. Okay, we're unmuted. Christine, if you want to do your recording. Yeah, got it. Okay, and have you done a roll call? Yeah. Everyone. Ours come over the ridge. Now it's in our backyard. Okay. All right, let's just check sound. Director David, can you hear us?
Yes, Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, Director Hewitt. You're good?
I'm all good, thank you.
Okay. And we know Director Fike is there. He had some sound issues. Can you hear us right now, Director Fike? I know you can message me, so I'll watch for that as well. Okay, we landed at 9.1.5 state of climate action. This is receipt for information. We've been doing this one for several years to give you the data on where we're at and our commitments. Paris is online. I don't want to enter a deep discussion on this one. You can always ask questions. Vandenberg and then Graham.
Thank you, through the chair, directed to Paris. So when I look at the report, the second attachment, the scorings and whatnot, which is really great. It's entitled 2023 update. Is that then, do I read that correctly? It's up until the end of 2023, so the first 2 quarters of 2024 are not reflected?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. It is, yeah. So we do it on the annual calendar. So it's for 2023, and then now we're working on 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Graham.
Thank you. So I was gonna ask a similar question. So, and just so I can understand the scoring, does it then start over in 2024? Like everything would go back to like 0 and we're just tracking the progress for just the items in this calendar year? Is that how this works?
Great question. It is specific project by project, but yes, it is done on what's been accomplished in that calendar year. And so, for example, if there were, so for example, the fire smart assessments, those are calculated on an individual basis. So what the number of fire smart assessments that were completed in one particular year. We are doing a more comprehensive report for 2024. And that will include looking back at the last 4 years and drawing trends. And so we'll start to see how we are progressing over the last 4 years. And my apologies, through the chair.
Yes.
I'm reading this report and I'm seeing member municipalities. So maybe a good question to be like, is who are the municipalities who do not participate in this? If there are any.
It's all.
It's all.
Yeah, it's due to climate action across the RDCK, so it's not specific to like the sustainability service. Member municipalities are all 9 that are members of this board.
So it's all municipalities. Okay,
Yeah.
just one more question if I can. One idea or just a thought that came to my mind here, and I don't know what the other directors may feel about this, but I'm just wondering if this would be something that should maybe be discussed at the CSLAC meetings where we have more time to go into some detailed discussions, even though not all the municipalities are there, but at least the area directors are there, we could actually get into some more. It was just a thought and a consideration for CSLAC.
Yeah, I'll let staff, if they want to respond to that, and then.
Thank you, through the chair. We'd be happy to bring it to CSLAC for the August meeting. We could also bring a draft of the 2024, or at least the 2024 SOCA report, which would be more comprehensive, to the CSLAC meeting as well for discussion, if that's the direction of the board.
I think it definitely merits a good point in that committees get to have those discussions. What occurs is that because you don't have all members participating in, we moved a lot of the climate change stuff into a general admin, but it does mean we gap on that discussion piece. So I think a happy medium at this point, short of all those not participating in sustainability, joining sustainability, which you're all welcome to do, is to ensure that when we have those meetings that everybody gets a copy of the agenda, and any other EAs or municipalities that are part of the service can still join the conversation. So I would suggest, like similar to what we do with rural affairs, when there's an item there that might be important to a municipality, we ensure they're invited to those meetings. So we can do that at the minimum. Long term, everybody should join. We're all doing this for everybody. Maine?
Yeah, I think that would be, what you just proposed would be a good model to use for this conversation, and we could certainly let everybody know and invite everybody to attend the meeting for that particular discussion and entice them to join.
Thank you, Director Hewitt.
Thank you, through the chair, to Paris. So this report is just a snapshot of 2023. Will 2024 encompass everything from when we started doing the reporting and measure it against where we want to be, according to the targets that were set? Because I think that, you know, it's great that we're making annual progress, but I think it would be good to know where we are. You know, how far down the road are we? How far are we from our actually stated goals for climate action?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Yes, I will. So We began this reporting in 2019. We're going to be working from 2020 to 2024, but looking at the the emissions data was based off of 2018. That's about the time lag that comes out of the province for the reporting data. And so in this year, we'll be looking at 2022 data. And so again, the 2018 to 2022, and we'll be able to provide that forecasting. Where have we, based on our initial projections, where are we to date, based on our current emissions, what do we need to amplify, what do we, and how do we reorganize our ambition in terms of actions. So yeah, again, yes, as you said, it's a snapshot, so it also will include all the indicators that we are collecting data on.
Okay. All right, and I will encourage directors, again, anytime you see these reports, especially received as information, if you have questions between now and the committee, you can always send those into staff. You can always engage staff on these items and dive deeper into them, and then you're never prohibited from doing that. All right, so receive for information, we'll talk about it more at CSLAC. We'll invite everybody else to join. 9.1.6 Community Wildfire Resiliency Plan Update Contract. David, if you wanted to speak to this one, go ahead.
Yes, I noticed areas D, E, F, and I weren't included in this report. So my assumption is, I know area I had its report completed. So my first question is are D, E, F, and I completed? And secondly is, how were those paid for compared to what we're proposing now?
Yeah, we just approved the DE and whatnot ones in terms of, that was about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, we approved all those. How they were paid, I'll go to.
Yeah, through the chair, I have to look back just to confirm Director David off. I don't have that handy. Unless Sangeeta does know, but I know that Dan and Nora are currently working in EOC and are unavailable right now.
And they were, I can't tell you, they were grant funded with CRI as well. Sangeeta, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, I believe that's what happened is we got grant funding through CRI, and that those reports, I believe, came in, but we're working on editing them and working with the consultant on them, from what I understand.
Okay, thank you.
And that answers your question, Dr. Davidoff?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Okay. Further pop off, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess Nora and Dan are not around, so I don't know if you can answer this question. Is at the last time our community wildfire resiliency plans were done, I had a call from CIFCO, which is a community forest in the Slocan Valley. Why were they not included in the planning process?
Through the chair, I don't know the answer to that one off the top of my head. I know that we've been in consultation with CIFCO in the past around work in the Slocan Valley, but I don't know at what point during that process we were.
Yeah, supplemental on that. I know they did some work around New Denver and Silverton, but they were concerned about Area H. Why were they not given the opportunity to be part of that contract? So maybe you can forward that to Nora or Dan and have them respond to me by email, so I can, if comes up from CIFCO again, I can respond to them.
So through the chair, was that around actually doing CWRP plans, or was it about implementing and doing actual wildfire mitigation work?
Both.
Okay.
I would suggest, Director Popoff, you send that question to staff and copy Stuart so that you're clear on what you're asking.
Okay.
Sorry, Dan and Nora are both in the EOC right now, so we don't have the ability to answer that, but it's better if it comes from you because you just clarified a specific that's important to come from you, and just copy Stuart on it.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to move a motion? So, thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. Further discussion? Vandenberg, go ahead.
Yes, so we've had this work done between 2015 and 2019. The report that was produced suggests there's a number of things that ought to be worked on. This is now an ask to update, I believe, that planning at a cost of $128,000. But what's missing here is scope and measurables, because there are some carryover action items from the initial 2015-2019 report, which is quite clearly evident. And so how are these two going to complement each other and not duplicate each other so that there's actually a pathway, an obvious pathway forward? This report does not talk about building on the learnings from the previous and then adding to. It doesn't talk about the scope and the measurables to watch for. So I'm kind of at a loss at $128,000. I would expect to have that type of information.
So the CWRP, the template and the requirements on them are set by the province. And so they changed the original template of the community wildfire protection plans and require them to be now this new template and this new model. Everything that's in the CWRP as an update will reflect back to the original CWPP and update that data to say, this is where we're at now. Is this still a high recommendation or is this a lower recommendation because it was activated? So they speak to each other. If you look at the Area D CWRP compared to the 2016 CWPP, you'll see how they carry forward that. Given they're the same contractors, they actually have a lot of the same information already and they're well in the loop on what was recommended versus what's still outstanding versus what might be new. The Wildfire DPA is a good example of one of the actions that was taken by the board, and then individually Fire Smart, a lot of the stuff, when you look through the recommendations, we've been active on them. They're very active. So there could be up to 50 recommendations in a CWPP. So they don't go item by item, it goes by plan and then identifies where does that land now in the high, medium to low recommendation list.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're
It
welcome.
would have been nice to be able to say that in that report.
They're so standard that I think it's sometimes lost on our staff what might be missing because folks are new to the team. Yeah. I'm sorry, I assume because Dan and Nora weren't here, I just answered that. Okay, motions on the floor for the discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The Sewer Water System Financial Plan Amendment. So yes, it is on this agenda. Director Tierney, who asked about this yesterday, and I said it was and then never looked. So there it is. It is. Would you like to move the motion?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the resolution. The board approve the RDCK entering into a contract with BA Blackwell Limited to not to exceed. Oh, sorry.
Wrong one.
Wrong one. The board directs staff to amend the 2024 financial plan for water utility area B listener service S3 to increase account capital expenditures by $40,000 for the PN 27 14th Street water main replacement project. Increase community works grants by $30,000. Increase transit reserves by $10,000.
Do we have a second? Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Your next motion?
Resolution 2, the board approved the community works funding application in the amount of $30,000 to partially fund the water utility area B lister service 2 S243 water main replacement project identified under capital expenditures.
Second? Thank you, Hanegraaff. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Sorry. Okay, item 9.3.1, Udashenia Improvement District. That is Hanegraaff. Go ahead.
Yeah, I move that the board approve the RDCK enter into a lease with the Udashenia Improvement District for the use of a section of the RDCK Udashenia Fire Hall property for the period of 10 years, and that the chair and corporate officer be authorized to sign the necessary documents.
Second, McFadden. Marie, I see you came in. Just want to say thanks. I know this one's been a long one.
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to let us know or you good?
Nope, all good. Thank you so much for putting this forward.
Okay. Further discussion?
I'm just glad it's finally done.
Yeah, I heard a bit of the history. I can understand. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, discretionary grants. I assume everybody checked their grants. We have no amendments on the agenda. Would anyone like to move this?
Sure.
Thank you.
Nice.
Jackman and Weatherhead. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And Crescent Valley Chamber of Commerce, this is a rescinding, area B.
Yes, thank you, Chair, that the resolution 35-24, being the allocation of discretionary grant funds, area B, Crescent Valley Chamber of Commerce, $1,000 be rescinded.
Thank you. Second. Your discussion?
Sure.
Yes?
Just on the question, when you rescind something like this, you can only rescind as long as the funds haven't been given out. Okay, so I assume those funds haven't been given out. Okay.
And this was at the request of the Chamber of Commerce.
Community development. Oh, sorry, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Community development.
Sure, I'll move them as presented.
Thank you. Second. Thank you. Main discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, Chair and CAO reports. What's my report? I think I just had that fire for the hazard call. Okay, so that was the last hazard call. I attended actually the other ones today. Okay. So those are my notes from it. They didn't, sometimes they provide the presentation, sometimes they don't. I didn't get the presentation, so that's all I know at this time. Likely there's new things to be said, but none of us were on that call today. Does anyone have questions for me on that one? I did pass it on, and Dan for emergency services was be aware of all of those aspects. And I think that's all I had to report on. Oh, I did have a conversation I had mentioned with the Food Policy Council item. I did speak with Damon Chouinard to follow up just to understand the CFLAC funding, how it moved into general admin, the history. So it's the only other kind of meeting I had as chair on behalf of the board was just to walk through our budget cycle, how that works, other funding opportunities. I talked to him about agricultural supports, things like that. So just gave him some guidance. That was it. Stuart.
EOC is activated. Welcome to summer. Could be some more lightning today. So hopefully BC Wildfire can stay on top of things. We do have one media release going out shortly for orders evacuation alert just south of Silverton for about 91 properties and an order for 11 properties, which have already been delivered door to door. So we're just monitoring that. The reception center is the Legion can for those people. And that's the only action that the EOC's taken so far, but I do expect more as the next couple of days progress.
Questions for Stuart? Weatherhead?
When those types of things happen, they do with the highways running through.
Through the chair right now, the highway's fine. The highway's open. There's no restriction there. I understand that for you. I understand they're closing it at 3.
Yeah. We hurry up and finish like this.
All right, we're moving along, So back to rule affairs. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Jackman.
Great, thank you. It's only 5 items this time. Fairly items to come to the board. As always, we are open on land use applications, various issues, to receive delegations, to speak to their application or their situation. This yesterday morning, we had 2 delegates, the owner, Judith Levinson, the one that was under item 7.4, courts, the third one on here. We had the representative from, on behalf of Telus, Chad Bartlett, from Cypress Lands that spoke to the next item, the 4th item on here, 4th resolution. So the 5, I think, are easier just done one at a time quickly. First one, Rising from committee item 7.1, building bylaw contravention, Diener, electoral area J. I move that the board approve issuance of a development variance permit D 2403J as described in that property, subject to the existing vegetation tree, coniferous trees being retained. So moved.
Second paragraph, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next one is rising from agenda item 7.2, temporary use permit Jansen, electoral area K. So this is just an initial step. I move that the board direct staff to provide clarification of the board's intention to consider temporary use permit T 2401K application by Martin Nolan Jansen and Susan Jansen at the property is described. And that's subject to BC Hydro providing the RDCK with confirmation that the owner worked with agencies in order to register the agreement easement on the property.
Second, thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
So the third one arising from agenda item 7.4, the third one on your list is, should have been noting, these are all vote. Site-specific exemption to the floodplain management bylaw, Levinson electoral area B. Move the board approve a site-specific floodplain exemption to permit the construction of a dwelling with a secondary suite with a floodplain setback of 7.5 meters in accordance with the engineering report provided on the lot as described, subject to restrictive covenant, subject to providing wastewater site assessment, and subject to registration of restrictive covenant identifying the development uses shall be limited to the maximum capacity of the proposed site wastewater system.
Thank you, Director Brown. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Next one came from item 7.5 on the agenda. This is ISCD Innovation Science Economic Development Referral for TELUS. It's a replacement tower for an existing tower, providing local Wi-Fi for internet. It's not a cell tower. So I noted Chad Marlock was there representing the applicant. But move the board direct staff to respond to TELUS regarding new telecommunication tower and antenna systems in electoral area B as described in attachment C of the etc. Said that.
Second. Thank you. Discussion? Maine?
I just would like to note for those who were not at the Rural Affairs Committee that there was a fair amount of discussion around this and around particularly the point that TELUS is not providing co-location services for other islands.
We also acknowledge that it's an advocacy point to raise that isn't necessarily as per application, but more so as a board on a political front, which we have done in the past. So on this motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the last motion?
The last motion arising from item 8.1 is the Community Works Fund application. I'll vote again for the Robson Fire Hall fencing and service door upgrade project. Move the Community Works funding application submitted by the RDCK for the project titled Robson Fire Hall fencing and service door upgrade in the amount of $63,750.49.5. Be approved. The funds be dispersed from area J.
Just slid that in my own.
I'll start. Okay. Discussion?
Chair, we don't use pennies anymore, do we? Sorry.
No. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, we've done public time. We're now going to, I'm going to call for a motion to post the meeting to the public.
Here's so moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Those, Kareen and Observer and the numbers that don't have names, if you can log off. Thank you very much. Motion to reset the open meeting. Thank you. Second, all those in favor? Thank you. And I'm just going to take one quick break for a second. So I'm just at a bit of a loss here because they're trying to figure out the premises ID
You're not
program.
muted into the phone line.
Okay, thanks. The number that doesn't have a name associated, just if you can take them up, Christine.
Just to know if you're gonna say anything.
Yeah, thank you. We'll be right back in a second. Those